Let's get it. 580 Sports Talk going up on a Tuesday afternoon. Great. Thanks for being with us for the next 3 hours here on 580 WIBW FM 104.9, 580WIBW.com, and on our live video stream, which you can find on our YouTube channel, 580 Sports Talk, and on our Facebook page, WIBW News. I realize now that the way I said that made it sound like if you are here right now, you are stuck with us for the next 3 hours. You are not allowed by law to touch that dial or turn off that video stream, as the case may be, close that browser. That is not true. You can come in and out however you'd like. The door is open for the next 3 hours. We appreciate any part of that you spend with us here on 580 Sports Talk. I am Dan Lucero. Brendan Rosinski is here. Spencer Dupuis will be along. We have got 3 jam-packed hours of sports talk today, and we can't wait to share them with you. We're going to talk some football. We got Matt Verderame coming on the show, bottom of the hour. Our NFL insider usually joins us Monday, unable to join us yesterday, but making up for it. He's going to join us this afternoon. We're going to talk to Matt about all things NFL. Matt has been very, maybe strident is an overstatement, but Matt is convinced and has expressed as much on this program and is continuing to express the belief that he thinks it's very clear who the 4 best teams in the NFL are, and that he thinks that we are headed, with no doubt in his mind, for a conference championship weekend that includes the Lions and Eagles in the NFC and the Chiefs and the Bills in the AFC. Is Matt right? Or are there more teams with the ability to play spoiler than maybe we're willing to give him credit for? Because my first thought is, yeah, I think those 4 teams are kind of head and shoulders everybody else. But you can look at the rest of the field of contenders. Who's got the best chance to play spoiler and make what would be at this point an unexpected run to the Super Bowl? We will get into that here in this first hour of the show. In the second hour of the program, Michael Swain will join us, our KU insider from Fog.net, part of the 24/7 Sports Network for Jayhawk Weekly. We'll get Michael's thoughts on the end of the football season for the Jayhawks. Look ahead to National Signing Day tomorrow, and also some thoughts on the first true road game of the season for the Jayhawks on the hardwood coming up. They're in Omaha tomorrow against Creighton.
Creighton might be shorthanded, literally shorthanded, because their tallest player is hurt.
Yes, Ryan Kalkbrenner's been banged up, and there's a chance he might not go. We'll get into that, how the matchup shakes out, whether he plays or not, coming up with Michael Swain.
Real quick, Ryan Kalkbrenner, good or tall?
Yes.
Ryan Kalkbrenner, good or old?
Better question, honestly. No, I think he's good.
I think he is too.
I think he's a good player. Yeah.
He is a good, although he's really struggled when he's been healthy recently. The whole team has struggled. Creighton's bizarre, truly bizarre program this year, which kind of makes Wednesday scary, if we're being honest.
Yeah.
But we'll talk to Michael about that next hour.
We will. We will get Michael's thoughts on that. We will give our own thoughts. Top of the 4 o'clock hour. Over the next 2 days, we're going to put our CSI 580 Sports Talk gloves and smocks on, and we're going to do a little bit of an autopsy on the end of the regular seasons for KU and K-State football, because neither program had seasons that they were anticipating. Cause of death, if you will, to extend out the autopsy metaphor. I won't beat it to death, I promise. But the autopsy for what went wrong with Kansas football. Why did this team, this collection of players, this coaching staff, this schedule, all of that, how did it end up like that? How did it end up at 5-7 and no bowl game? And how does it get better from here? Is this a sign of leakage in the program, a sign of backward momentum, or is this a unfortunate misstep on what is still potentially an upward trajectory? We're going to break all that down later on.
What hat are we putting on?
We're going to do CSI 580 Sports Talk. Aviators at home.
Oh, mine are in my office downstairs. I'll be good.
Okay, yeah, you
I'll
can
be
go,
ready.
you can go put them on. You can go put them on all dramatically if you got a good one. one-liner.
I love that that's just something we have lying around now.
I know.
Just aviator sunglasses.
$5 pair of sunglasses for Five Below, just as a bit. Trenton Kraxner, our summer intern, his lasting contribution to the program.
Dude, it's a great bit.
Remembering guys and wearing aviator sunglasses. Really
Showing
good
up
stuff.
to work wearing them.
It was actually you that wore them first, but it was him who encouraged the behavior.
Yes, because I wore them because I'm pretty sure the story was I just forgot to leave them in my car and I had them on me. So I wore them in and I thought I looked sick with the jacket that I took from a box of used station stuff one day. And then Trenton started bringing his in and just wearing them during the show.
Yeah, really, really funny. Anyhow, we will do that with regards to KU football. We'll get into K-State tomorrow. We'll give our thoughts and then talk it over with Tim Fitzgerald. He joins us on Wednesday's show. Also, sounds like the Royals are still in the trade market, and that might be, according to reporting from The Athletic, the most realistic path to the Royals adding the kind of middle-of-the-order bat that, one, they want, and two, they really need. I have two names I'm going to throw out there. One of them is near and dear to my heart as a former Colorado Rocky. Two guys that their teams are willing to trade that would not come cheaply in terms of what it would cost to pay the rest of the players' contracts, but players who would make the Royals better by their addition to the lineup, to the middle of the lineup specifically. So I have some thoughts on that. Also, interesting reporting about who the fifth starter for the Royals might be. It's a familiar name. It's just an unfamiliar role. Well, it was a familiar role, and then last year it wasn't. We'll get into that. Talk a little baseball in the 5 o'clock hour. I'm so excited. I was telling you this earlier. I'm glad to be able to talk hot stove baseball for a change about a team that's good and trying to get better. Like, what the hell did we do the last couple of years when the Royals were stuck in 100-loss hell? And it was like, well, they could sign this guy. They're not gonna, but they could. And that was the extent of what we could do when the stove was hot. And then last year they decided, well, what if we tried?
Yeah, what if we actually started cooking on the hot stove?
And it caught us so completely off guard, but we were kind of right. We said, hey, like these are like really good signings. These guys are going to help the team. And they helped them all the way into the American League Division Series. So I have some thoughts. I have a couple of potential trade targets for the Royals. Again, realistic? I don't know. I think so because both players are very much on the trade block. But a couple of thoughts that I have. And I'm excited to throw those around in the 5 o'clock hour, getting some baseball with you guys today. Plus, all of the things you've come to know and love from a Tuesday edition of the show. We got our 580 Sports Talk headlines. We'll do what is wrong with you in the 4 o'clock hour. We got some random question Tuesday coming up, all that good stuff. You are, as always, invited and encouraged to be a part of the conversation here on 580 Sports Talk. Multiple ways to do that. You can text the show. The text line is 785-272-9429. That's 785-272-9429. You can also, if you're watching on YouTube, there is a live chat feature on the YouTube page, if you're watching on the web, or in your app. There is a live chat feature, and you can comment and interact with us and with your fellow listeners to the program in that live chat feature. We welcome those of you who are in on the live chat today. Say hello to Jason, Mark H, and Mark B. Christopher's in, Jeffrey as well. We'll get more and more people in there, as usually is the case as we go along today. But thanks for being here for this Tuesday edition of 580 Sports Talk, whether we can see your name on the YouTube live chat or whether you are nameless to us, but driving around or sitting at your desk, however you're listening to the show today. Just appreciate you being here for the day. So Matt Verderame has been saying this for a couple of weeks now. He thinks it's pretty clear cut that the two best teams in each conference are separating themselves. Philadelphia and Detroit in the NFC, Buffalo and Kansas City in the AFC. I tend to think he's right.
I agree.
I think that those four teams, and you have to add this caveat basically because of the Chiefs, because Philadelphia, Detroit, and Buffalo are playing some really good football. I mean, Detroit just did escape Chicago on Thursday, but before that, they've been creaming everyone. Mm-hmm. Philadelphia just got a really good road win. Buffalo beat the life out of San Francisco on Sunday night. Kansas City's the one team in this group that hasn't been convincing, you could say, the last couple of times out. But I think we can all agree that we have seen what it looks like when the Chiefs play their best. And when they play their best, they're in that conversation. Also, they're the two-time defending Super Bowl champions. So those are the four, is what it feels like right now. And I guess the first way I want to kind of attack this question are, what are the things that could keep one of those four teams from ending up on Championship Sunday in the NFL? Because for the Chiefs, that's really obvious, right? They're the team that is playing the worst of those four. Their weaknesses have been more laid bare. Also, we watch every down. Yep. So, like, we see it in a way, maybe we miss it with some teams where we're not grinding the tape in the way that we do with the Chiefs. But the Chiefs' weaknesses are very obvious. Number one is left tackle, a weakness that they hope to have addressed with the addition of DJ Humphries. And again, like we talked about yesterday, DJ Humphries doesn't need to be like prime Jonathan Ogden. He really doesn't. He just needs to be better than what Wanye Morris has been the last 2 weeks. I would even say that all he needs to do is be what Wanye Morris was before he got hurt. Because before the Buffalo game, essentially, that version of Wanye Morris, I think, is good enough. Because Matt told us on the show, that was something else he said. Like, look, they could win a Super Bowl with Wanye Morris at left tackle. That was before the decline in his performance the last couple of weeks. But that's all DJ Humphries needs to be, is a serviceable starting left tackle for this Chiefs team. If he is that, that addresses the main weakness that the Chiefs have. The other weakness that they have over on the defensive side of the ball, we've talked about cornerback too a lot. Joshua Williams was really good on Friday against the Raiders. Maybe that's a step in the right direction for that. But the other thing that the defense has to start doing differently, we've talked about the sacks, but this is not a turnover creating defense either. I think we can officially say, like, this is not a defense that creates big plays. Not a lot of sacks, which means not a lot of negative plays. Tackles for loss, sure, on like running plays and stuff, but those aren't like splashy negative plays. And turnovers, the field flippers, the game-changing plays, this Chiefs defense has largely lacked this season. So no matter how much talent you have on the defensive side of the ball, and I think the Chiefs certainly have a high level of talent on that side, accomplished guys up and down that defensive depth chart. You're playing the game on hard if you don't turn the other team over and you don't sack the quarterback. And so if they don't start doing those two things, the performance of that group is going to continue to be diminished.
Yeah, it's hard to not give any help to the what you would end up calling the back seven, essentially, with a pair of linebackers in your base set and then your five defensive backs. It's hard to give them very little, like, you're not speeding up the opposing quarterback. And that is a problem, because as good as a guy like Trent McDuffie is, and I think he is an elite cornerback in the NFL, it's hard to make him cover for a long time. It's a lot easier to cover when quarterbacks are making bad decisions. They can't put a lot behind the throw. They don't have guys who can just run around forever trying to get open. It makes things really hard on a secondary, and the Chiefs already have issues in their secondary at that CB2 spot. Hopefully Joshua Williams is taking a step forward after being benched a couple weeks ago. But that's the big concern, I think, on the defensive side of the ball. Offensively, I'm with you. I mean, DJ Humphries can... Like, if DJ Humphries was as good at left tackle as Andrew Wiley was at tackle 2 years ago, like, Chiefs should be the favorite, at least, you know, in terms of their offense to go back and repeat for another Super Bowl.
Can he be as good as Juwan Taylor is? Because Juwan Taylor is nobody's idea of like an elite tackle, but like, he can win his matchup.
Yeah, that'd be great.
He can lose his matchup, but he can win his matchup.
Yeah, I would say that's even above the bar I think the Chiefs need Humphries to be. So there's some wiggle room there. He just needs to be competent. But defensively, it does feel like it's more of a structural problem. And the concern for me, and I've said this before, is I don't know why. Like, still got Chris Jones. Still got George Karlaftis. You're getting Charles Omenihu back more and more. You've got pretty much the same defensive line you had last year. Most of the same pieces you've had for a couple years now. It's just odd to me that they haven't been able to generate nearly enough. They haven't been able to finish plays. I don't really have a reason why. And you've got to be able to get after the quarterback. You have to, because otherwise teams are just going to tear you apart.
For the other teams that were talking about here, Philadelphia, Detroit, Buffalo. For the NFC teams, it's really easy. Like for all of these teams, injuries are a concern because it's football and attrition can hit any team at any time. But it's really hitting the Lions right now on defense. They've obviously already lost Aiden Hutchinson, their best pass rusher. The linebacker they lost this last week.
Oh gosh. No, why am I blanking on his name too? Hold the phone. Well, we'll pull this up. Was that Rodriguez who got hurt?
Yeah, it was Rodriguez.
Yeah, Malcolm Rodriguez.
So
yeah, he went on IR.
Yeah, Malcolm Rodriguez going on IR. Now they're trying to patch the holes. They traded for Zadarius Smith. They signed they signed Jamal Adams.
Awesome. I love it.
They signed Quan Alexander as well. They're just trying to patch these holes, but
Alex Anzalone is on IR.
Yeah, there's a diminishing returns after a while, and the defense might not be fearsome enough by the time you get to the. I just wonder if they're really well coached. Like that's the biggest.
My question for the Eagles then.
Yeah.
Honestly, because they've been a slow starting team, but they haven't really had to play from behind a whole lot. Like Devontae Smith's great. He's got to be healthy. A.J. Brown is obviously great. Saquon Barkley is great. Their offensive line is very good. But they've been able to rely largely on Saquon Barkley being great. Can he be that great if you're 10 points behind in the second half? Like, do you? And because I'm not a Jalen Hurts believer. I think the greatest game Jalen Hurts ever played in the NFL is probably a loss in Super Bowl 57.
Yes,
and because he was awesome.
He was.
I don't think he's been even close to that in almost any game since. So I'm not a true believer in him. But most of these games since then, they've really just been smoking teams. What does it look like if they're playing from behind? I think that's my big concern with them. And this week, we probably won't see it because they're playing the Panthers, but they get the Steelers again. They get the Steelers and they get the Commanders again right before Christmas, then Cowboys, Giants to end the year. So they're not going to be super tested the rest of the way. That Steelers game I'm fascinated by. And the Commanders will give them a battle in Washington. But that's my big concern from them because I don't know that they can because so much of their game is predicated on get ahead at halftime and then beat you into dust with Saquon Barkley in the second half.
Pretty good
strategy.
Yeah,
if it works, it's awesome.
They got the record to prove it for sure.
I guess the key is just don't go behind.
What are you worried about if you're Buffalo? Because right now it feels like we talked about yesterday, they're the team of good vibes right now. They've got the likely MVP and Josh Allen, and they feel like they're clicking in a way that it did not feel A, possible that they could click this year, but B, I don't know that it's been this good in the Josh Allen tenure.
I don't think it has been, to be completely honest with you. I think the Bills now are a more complete team, not as talented defensively, but I think they are a more complete team.
And they're getting healthier. Like Amari Cooper's going to get healthier. Keon Coleman's going to get back at some point. Matt Milano's coming back. Like they're getting healthier.
And I still like a lot of the pieces they have on defense. Like Matt Milano is a really good player. I like Teron Johnson and Terrell Bernard a lot. I think those dudes are studs. DeMar Hamlin has actually played really well this year. And people thought he was going to be the weak link on their defense, not just because, the whole world watched him die a couple of years ago.
Right.
But I mean, he's always been kind of like a fourth safety, but he's actually played pretty well for them this year. Greg Rousseau is really good up front. Rasul Douglas is my guy. He's played really well this year.
Yeah, we thought the secondary would be a weakness. They lost their two starting safeties who'd been the anchors of the back end for years, and that group has actually played really, really well.
And if you've watched Jordan Poyer in Miami, the Bills pretty clearly made the right decision on that. That's always the difference between the good teams and the great teams, because the great teams know. They know when to pull the trigger, and it's, Belichick 1 year early rather than 1 year late. Chiefs did that with Tyrann Mathieu. They got out at the exact right time. Yeah. I think the Bills have done that with Jordan Poyer, and Micah Hyde's still not playing because his neck is all messed up. I don't know. Previously, the big question would have been, I like Shakir, I like Keon Coleman, but what if those games, because they had a couple games early in the year where they were just off. They were struggling. Curtis Samuel was their best receiver in a couple games. That's not going to work in the playoffs. Amari Cooper's really good. And I think when Amari Cooper is engaged, he's really good. And I think he's really engaged right now.
Yeah, their passing game makes a little more sense. They've got a hierarchy of who they're going to go to in kind of how they're going to divvy up the target share. And it feels like Josh Allen's really locked in with that group. I honestly think the biggest concern for Buffalo might be intangible. It's you get to January and now what?
Because, I think that's true.
Because it's never happened for them. They've reached one conference championship game. They got paved.
McDermott is
losing in the divisional round.
Sean McDermott's a really good coach, and I think he's coached really well this season, but he has not always been the guy who has coached well in the postseason.
No, he has not. So you have to do it. That's the hardest thing. Everybody can tell you can do it, but when you've got that history of tripping up short of the finish line in the postseason, that can linger. Just ask generations of Chiefs teams.
Joe on YouTube does make a good point. If the Bills get home field, I like them to get it done. They are built better for the elements now than they ever have been during the Josh Allen era.
Yeah, because they can run the ball.
Yeah.
With James Cook.
Yep.
They got a downhill running game. Yeah, they can. Remember when Cincinnati ran them ragged in the snow 2 years ago?
Yep.
That was unthinkable that could happen, and it did. I don't think that happens to this year's edition of the Bills. Yes, home field, I think, is going to be pretty critical in the AFC playoffs. So let's bring it all the way around to this. Those are the 4 teams we think are the likeliest to reach championship weekend. Give me one team in the league. If it's not one of those 4 teams, AFC or NFC, the one team in the league you feel the best about being able to potentially play spoiler.
One in the whole league?
One in the whole league.
I'll sound like a homer saying, and I'm going to go with Green Bay. The reason why, Green Bay played within 1 score in a bizarro world game against Philadelphia. And with injuries to Detroit's defense, I really like the Green Bay offense against Detroit. I think Green Bay's best is just as good as those other 2 teams. The problem is Green Bay's defense, which takes the ball away a ton. Really, really good. Success rate, though, down to down, if they're not getting turnovers, really, really, really bad. Green Bay is second worst in the whole NFL in defensive drop-back success rates. When a team drops back to pass and either throws or scrambles. Second worst in the entire NFL. That's a down-to-down stat. That worries me a lot. So at their best, I think Green Bay is honestly just as good as those other 2 teams, but they haven't done it down to down. It's been big plays. If someone takes away those explosives, both sides of the ball, I worry a little bit more. But they played the Lions closer than most teams have during this season, and they were within 1 score with a chance at the end before Jordan Love got hurt in Brazil against the Eagles.
Being a divisional opponent of one of those teams is an advantage.
Yes, it is.
They're not going to be scared of the Lions. They see them twice a year. They're going to feel like they can match up with them.
Thursday Night Football this week, Packers-Lions.
That's right. Banger of a Thursday nighter.
My runner-up, real quick, Pittsburgh.
They are my choice. Pittsburgh is my choice.
Russell for 400 yards this week.
Russell Wilson is turning back the clock. This is the best he has looked, I would say, since like 2018.
Yeah.
He is comfortable in that offense. He has found the connection with his receivers, with his tight ends. The running game is clicking. They're playing as well up front as they've played in a long time. And then defensively, they just get after the quarterback. And
best pass rush in the league.
I think it is.
And deepest, too.
Yeah, Watt. Highsmith is coming off injury.
Herbig's played well.
Yeah, Herbig had the strip sack last week that led to the scoop and score that really put the game away. For me, it is. And it's Pittsburgh. And you got a coach who's done it before. Mm-hmm. And you've got a great home field advantage there in Pittsburgh. For them to be able to get into that divisional round. And, a quarterback who's won a Super Bowl. Like, guys who've been there, guys who've done that in Pittsburgh. The team we should be talking about, but we're not, is Baltimore. And we're not talking about them, though, for good reason.
Yeah.
Baltimore feels very unserious. And I don't know if it's they can't rely on their kicking game all of a sudden.
Doesn't help.
It's a disaster. The Ravens are? The Ravens are a baseball team where you do not trust their bullpen.
Yeah.
That's what they are right now. Like the Ravens are like a baseball team where got a really good lineup. They got some star starting pitchers. But if they get into the 7th inning and the game is closed, it's shaky back there. That's who the Ravens are right now. Like those little things, those marginal things. Too many losses, too many disappointing performances. At their best, they're really, really good, but they just don't get to that level as often as
I agree.
I'm
with you.
Really ought to. We're going to take a break here at 580 Sports Talk. Matt Verderame is going to talk about this stuff with us, our NFL insider. He's joining us at the bottom of this hour. But first, we got a little Random Question Tuesday after this timeout. You're just getting started with us here on 580 Sports Talk. 3:33 on 580 Sports Talk. We're just getting revved up. Matt Verderame's going to join us in about 5 minutes here on the program. First, a quick fire random question Tuesday. Brendan, what is your greatest weakness as a player of sports video games? Any genre, football, baseball, whichever. What are you the worst at? Me, it's always been passing the football. Madden, NCAA or CFB, whatever you want to say, I have always been good for like 25 interceptions a season in my dynasty mode or my franchise mode. Cannot do it.
I can't hit balls in baseball games. Can't do it. My batting is terrible. Just like in real life when I played Little League and whatnot, like couldn't hit to save my life. Can't do it. Pitching, fine, no problem. Ground ball pitcher. I'm always a ground ball pitcher.
There you go. That's democratic. I appreciate that.
Yeah, keep the sinkers low, keep the heaters low. That's what we do. I can't hit the ball. Like I can scheme up a good offense in Madden or NCAA. You put an old college basketball game in front of me, I'm gonna cook your ass. Baseball though, throw me 3 curveballs and I'm out on 3 pitches every time. Can't do it.
Yeah, the low pitch is.
I will never walk. I have never walked in a single game of the show unless it's intentional.
During COVID, I got really into playing like the full games on the show and like really being patient, working walks. I drew like 12 walks in a game once. Took me an hour and a half to play 9 innings. It ruled. It was awesome. Anyway, you got a random question?
Yes, also sports related. In honor of Bo Nix going crazy last night, and really for like 4 weeks running now, who's your biggest miss? And too early to make a full judgment on Bo Nix's career, but the prospect that you were sure was going to be either awful or great, and they turned out to be the polar opposite.
For a prospect I thought was going to be awful and has ended up being great, Justin Herbert.
That's a good one.
Big whiff on Justin Herbert.
I remember when I used to do draft analyses for 580WIBW.com under its old name. I ranked at the time Justin Herbert below Jordan Love in my 2020 draft rankings. I don't know how that ended up working out for me. Like, they're both great. I don't know how that worked out.
So I'm wrong a lot, and like it's documented on the show. Like I'm probably wrong like at least 4 or 5 times a day. But like
same.
I wrong about like guys I thought were going to be good. I thought Malik Willis was going to be maybe one of the better quarterbacks in his class.
I see that. It's N'Keal Harry. I thought he was going to be a superstar, and he stinks.
Matt Verderame next on 580 Sports Talk. We are joined a day late, but never a dollar short on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits hotline by Matt Verderame, our NFL insider, covers the league for Sports Illustrated, SI.com. You can also check him out on That Football Show on the KC Sports Network and his own subscribers only, the Matt Verderame Show on his Patreon, which you can check out if you follow him on social media. Find him on Twitter at Matt Verderame. Matt, appreciate you taking the time a day later than usual. So let's jump into the topic we were discussing at the top of the show today. You said on this show, and you have continued to say publicly on social media, you feel like it's a clear-cut two best teams in each conference, Philadelphia and Detroit in the NFC, Kansas City and Buffalo in the AFC. My first question is this. We were able to kind of figure out what the weaknesses, the Achilles heel, the concerns were for Philadelphia, Detroit, and certainly Kansas City. What's Buffalo's biggest worry right now? Because right now they seem like they're floating on good vibes and riding the back of the MVP, and it's hard to see the weaknesses right now with the Bills.
I think the weaknesses for the Bills is their coach and their history. Like they go into the playoffs knowing that they've got a bear in front of them in Kansas City that the Chiefs just don't have to face. The Chiefs beat them every time it matters. And the way things are right now, if they played, that game would be in Kansas City. Now, maybe that changes. I also think from just a game-to-game standpoint, look, McDermott has always gotten more conservative in the playoffs. Does that happen again? If that happens again, that could be the difference between where they win and they lose. Schematically on the field, I think the big question I have with Buffalo is their pass rush in the playoffs. That has killed them year after year after year. They've gotten in there, and nobody can get home. And it's a group that is a solid group. They don't have anybody who's great. They don't have a Chris Jones. They don't have even an Aleem McNeil, where he wreaks havoc inside Detroit. Obviously, Hutchinson is healthy. Can the Bills get enough pressure on these elite AFC quarterbacks they're going to face to win these games? I think the Bills are very, very good. But I do think there are real questions about a Bills team that every time they've gotten in the playoffs the last 4 or 5 years, it's always been kind of a big problem.
So if it's not the Bills and the Chiefs in the AFC, who is the team likeliest to upset the apple cart right now? Who is the team that you look at and say they're going to get in the field and they play the kind of football that can make them a really, really tough out in January, even for really good teams in Buffalo and KC?
If you'd asked me this before the year, I would have said Houston. But having watched Houston, I just don't see that happening. I think if Houston was in any other division, they wouldn't even make the playoffs. But because they're where they are, they're going to limp their way to 9-10 wins to get in. I think I have to say Baltimore. Like, Denver, to their credit, they've really impressed me. I did not think there's any world that that team was going to even be sniffing 8-9 wins. Here they are. The Chargers are a tough team. I would not be shocked if they pulled off a big upset in a playoff game. I just think they're too limited offensively. And Pittsburgh, kind of the same thing. Like, Russ is playing well, but in a playoff game, if you can take Pickens out of the game, I just don't know what they do offensively. The Ravens could just have a game where Henry rushes for $150 and Jackson's cooking, and they just beat you 35-28. Like, they could have a game where they do that. They've been in the playoffs. Harbaugh's battle test. He's won a Super Bowl. Like, I think they would have to be the team that you look at and go, look, if you're Buffalo and Kansas City, you like to avoid that team in the playoff game.
What about the NFC? Who's the team that Detroit or Philadelphia should be sweating coming up on their heels in the NFC playoffs?
To me, that's a lot easier. I think it's the Packers. The Packers, to me, if you take out the top 4 teams in either conference, the best team. I think they're better than Baltimore. I think they're certainly better than anybody else who's going to win a division in the NFC or a wild card team. I mean, Minnesota has a case because Minnesota's really well coached and they've got weapons. The problem with Minnesota is you're just going to get into a game where you're going to ask Darnold to go win the game. And I don't know. It's one thing when you're doing that at home against the Cardinals. That's a whole nother deal when you're doing that in Detroit or when you're doing that in Philly. I think the Packers are good enough. They could go to Philly or Detroit and win. I wouldn't be shocked. I don't think that's some crazy ask. Yeah, they'd be underdogs. I don't think it'd be nuts. I think the NFC, I think you have less, like outside of Green Bay, I don't think anybody's going to pull some big upset in the NFC playoffs. I just don't see it happening. The AFC is different. Like I truly do believe Kansas City and Buffalo are going to end up in the AFC title game, regardless of venue. But like you could argue that the Chargers win a playoff game. You could argue that Pittsburgh wins a playoff game or two. Or same with Baltimore. I think Green Bay is the one team in the NFC that could really like actually shake up the playoff picture in a meaningful way.
We're chatting with Matt Verderame, joining us here on 580 Sports Talk, as he usually does on Mondays. Kind enough to join us on Tuesday this week on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits Hotline. Go check out his work either in Sports Illustrated at SI.com, on the Matt Verderame Show on Patreon, or That Football Show on the KC Sports Network. And music to my ears, talking all that nice stuff about the Green Bay Packers. But I did want to ask about the AFC, Matt, and a couple of those teams that are probably at this point going to make it into the playoffs. And we'll start with the team that won last night in a surprising thriller. The Denver Broncos. Bo Nix is better than pretty much anybody thought he would be at this early point in his career. Their offense has really hit a rhythm. The defense wasn't great last night, but it's been very good under Vance Joseph. Is that one of those teams that I'm not going to say could win a Super Bowl, but do you think they could make a little bit of a run and make some noise in the AFC playoffs, maybe upset one of those better teams ahead of them?
Yeah, they could. I got to tell you, like, they're the kind of team, if I'm the Bills or the Chiefs, I expect to win the game. I am not thrilled to have to play them because they do a lot of things. They get after the passer. They can certainly shut you down with Sertano when Riley Moss is healthy. They play last night when he is healthy. It's a very underrated corner. You know, offensively, Nix is one of those guys that I could see him throwing the Broncos out of a playoff game. Like, you just pressure him, you cause some problems, all of a sudden it's a disaster. He's also the kind of guy, he doesn't know what he doesn't know yet. And he is willing to just throw some ball. Like he did that 93-yard touchdown on Monday night. And that ball, he probably shouldn't have thrown it, but he just figured, screw it. I'm going to let this thing rip. And that's a throw that, like, I think a lot of veteran quarterbacks wouldn't have made. Their brain would be telling them not to do it. Denver, you know, they're well coached. Like, they're an odd, and again, that's what I was kind of saying about the AFC. Chargers are the same way. The Chargers probably should not beat the Bills or the Chiefs, but you could see a world where they go to Buffalo and Herbert just plays great and they're getting pressure, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, the Chargers are up 17-13 with 5 minutes left. That conference to me is a lot deeper than the NFC.
From AFC wildcard contenders who are dangerous to an NFC division that is dangerous to your health, who's going to win the NFC West?
I mean, I think at this point it's pretty safe to say the Niners aren't doing it.
Yeah.
So Seattle has already beaten Arizona at home. Now they go play at Arizona this weekend in a game that is massive, obviously, for both teams. The Rams still have to play the Cardinals at home. They got blown out by them, I believe it was in week 2 in Arizona. So you can't really take anything from the divisional records and say, oh, I think it's going to be this team. But my gut says that the Rams are going to find a way in. I just think they're better than Seattle and Arizona, and they still have to play Arizona at home, and they still have to play the Seahawks at home. They beat them on the road already, as I said. So I kind of think the Rams, by the way, very interesting game this weekend against Buffalo. Games at SoFi. Bills coming off clinching the division. They've got the Lions next week in Detroit. They've got to go all the way across the country to play the Rams. If there's ever a week that the Rams beat the Bills, it's this week. It's a weird spot. You know, it's not a primetime game. Like, you wonder if this is a game where the Rams are desperate as hell to win and Buffalo's kind of caught a little bit off guard. I think the Rams, I think the Rams have a real shot to win this game because I think it just means so much more to them than it does to Buffalo, even though, of course, the Bills do have a lot to play for.
It's been quite a week for the Chicago Bears, and I know you're pretty well connected to that team, Matt, given where you are based out of. But between another absolutely preposterous loss on Thanksgiving Day against the Lions, a game that, frankly, they probably should have ended up winning, or at least had a good chance at winning, then they let Matt Eberflus have his morning press conference on Friday while the brass is meeting, then decide to fire him 2 hours after the fact. I mean, just a complete fiasco for that team. What are your sort of lingering thoughts from what that franchise has done and gone through over the past week?
They're horribly run. And if that doesn't change, they could bring God in as their head coach, and it's not going to matter. Like, we always do this thing, right? Like every year, everybody in our chairs sit here and we go over, okay, what are the best landing spots? Who's got the quarterback? Who's got the picks? What kind of cap space do they have? All this stuff. And that's all valid. And none of it matters if you are run like a Three Stooges operation. The Bears have just done this for years. They can't find a coach. They bumble through trying to find a quarterback. Now, Williams, look, I think Williams has an upside to him that is meaningful. I also think, like, let's not sit here and pretend he's been incredible as a rookie. He's been up and down. He might end up being great. He might end up being a guy. I know that there's a world where Ben Johnson leaves Detroit and goes to Chicago. That's out there. I know my colleague Connor Orr, who does a phenomenal job every year, or he wrote a piece, I think it was a week ago, where guys can land. Like Ben Johnson to Chicago is the thing that people are talking about. And I get it, but the Bears are just not run well. No well-run organization is putting their coach out there for a presser than firing. Like, it just doesn't happen like that. And then the Bears afterwards are like, yeah, we could have done a better job. Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, you could have done a better job with that. Yes. Like, how about having that meeting at 6 a.m. and firing the coach at 8? It's so poorly run. And you watch that game on Thanksgiving. I don't know how you guys felt about it. The entire time the Bears were driving down the field, I was sitting there with my wife's family, all Bears fans. Every single one of them were like, yeah, they're not going to tie this game. There's no way they're going to actually finish the job. And, of course, they didn't disappoint.
Yeah, Matt, my dad has been a Bears fan for his entire life. I mean, since the early 60s, as early as he can remember. And I was talking to him on Thanksgiving night, and he was just at a loss for words. All he said, I believe, was, they just find new ways to lose, huh? And that was it. He had no other words for it.
Again, it's not the same thing, but it's like the Jets, right? Where you look at the Jets and you just go, I don't care. I don't care who they bring in as a coach. I don't care who the next quarterback is. I don't care who the GM is. If Woody Johnson's running that organization, they're not good. And if they're good, it's by accident, and it's not going to last long. Because teams that are run like that, look, I am a Knicks fan, okay? I went through 20 years of James Dolan just destroying any momentum that team ever had. And the only reason they got good was because James Dolan decided to build the Sphere in Vegas and just got distracted by a shiny toy. And then the Knicks got really good while he wasn't involved. And now he's finally, I guess, learned to just stay out of it. Ownership in sports is so much more important than people realize. I also grew up an Oakland A's fan in baseball. Enough said, right? Like, it's just, if you have good ownership, you may struggle, you will bounce back. If you have bad ownership, you will never sustainably be good.
Matt Verderame joins us weekly here on 580 Sports Talk and the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits Hotline. He's our NFL insider. Read his work at sportsillustratedsi.com. Subscribe to his Patreon. Great insider info on the Matt Verderame Show. Find him on Twitter at Matt Verderame. Matt, appreciate the time. As always, we will talk to you next week.
Sounds good. Take care.
That is Matt Verderame. We'll step aside for a break, come back and wrap up this 3 o'clock hour, 580 Sports Talk. Wrapping up the 3 o'clock hour in 580 Sports Talk, a team we did not mention, not once this hour. Jeffrey brings them up in the YouTube live chat. What about the Vikings? How do we feel about them? They're 10-2, but it feels like nobody considers them seriously. And I think that's because we just saw this movie. They were 11-1 last year.
All their games are one-score games, and Sam Darnold's played really well this year, but
it's still Sam Darnold, right?
Yeah.
Like, you got to go win a playoff game. There are guys who can go do that and guys who can't. That's the whole thing. Like, that's why I will believe that Bo Nix is that guy when I see it. But I know Russell Wilson has been that guy in his career. I know Lamar Jackson has struggled to prove that he is that guy.
Mm-hmm.
But I've seen, Jared Goff do it. I've seen Patrick Mahomes do it a lot.
Just look at the Vikings win, like who they're winning against and what the deficits are. They had to took overtime to beat the Bears by a field goal.
Yeah, beat Cardinals by 1. Yeah, a ton of one-score games. Beat the Jaguars 12-7. That game should have been quarantined. Yeah, they're 10-2, but like they were 11-1. It was last year, wasn't it? They were 11-1, or was that 2 years ago? That was 2 years ago.
I think it was
because that was the year Cousins was healthy all the way through. Yeah, they were 11-1. And
yes, you were correct.
Nobody trusted them then, and they were right to not be trusted then.
Correct.
And it kind of feels the same. We're going to talk KU football, an autopsy for a failed 2024 season, and we'll be joined by Michael Swain of Fog.net to get his thoughts as well. Plus, what is wrong with you? Coming up in the 4 o'clock hour, 580 Sports Talk. Let's get it. It's hour number 2 of 580 Sports Talk on this Tuesday afternoon. Thanks for being with us. We got 2 more hours to hang out with you today. We're going to give way to K-State women's basketball at the 6 o'clock hour. 13th ranked team in the country taking on Eastern Illinois. Aoka Lee 13 points shy of setting the all-time scoring record at Kansas State, breaking Kendra Wecker's record. So that's something to listen for tonight as the Cats take the floor. 6:30 tip-off at Bramlage Coliseum. Coverage starting at 6 o'clock when we're done right here on the Sports Voice of Kansas. 580 WIBW, FM 104.9, online at 580WIBW.com. Hello to all of our video viewers on our YouTube live stream. We are on our channel, 580 Sports Talk. We are also on Facebook at WIBW News. You saw old friend of the show, former producer Britt Zweigert, doing a dance that I can only describe as completely unhinged. In the minute or so before we came on the air. So if you hung out with us through that, God bless you. That was a wild one.
Very funny though.
Well, we appreciate you tuning in. If you are watching the video, 580 Sports Talk on YouTube, there's a live chat feature. You can jump on in, interact with your fellow listeners, and interact with us. Mark H. points out that high school basketball is coming up. It sure is, Mark. What a great segue to tell you folks that the 2024 basketball version of the Pigskin and Hoops preview is now online in full. All 28 area teams previewed at 580WIBW.com. Just go to the sports tab. It's 2024 Pigskin and Hoops. You can read about all of the local teams, not just the city and Shawnee County schools, our 28 area teams that we cover. Full basketball previews ahead of the opener on Friday night. Our first 580 Preps Game of the Week doubleheader takes us to Silver Lake on Friday night. See the defending 3A girls champions, as well as a pretty solid boys team as well, taking on Perry LeCompton in Big East action. No, not Creighton versus Marquette. No, this is the new Big East League in Kansas, and we've got Silver Lake versus Perry LeCompton, our first 580 Preps Game of the Week doubleheader this Friday night right here on the Sports Voice of Kansas, 580 WIBW.
That league is truly insane in terms of the depth and the quality of programs.
Yeah.
Really, really absurd.
It is.
We're starting off game 1 with a league game?
Game 1 is a league game, yeah. A lot of
That's how you get up for a game 1.
Yes, this is very true. And these are new league mates because Silver Lake from the Mid-East League and Perry LeCompton from the old Big 7. So this has never been a league matchup before. They've seen each other in sub-states and but never played as league opponents, at least not in recent memory until now. So yeah, we got some high school basketball coming up. So thanks for the segue, Mark H and Mark B. Appreciate you setting the table for that. Also, you can text the program. 785-272-9429 is the number. That is 785-272-9429. You can text the program, and certainly appreciate those who do that as well. Christopher in the YouTube comments asked about Kansas high school basketball. Are they experimenting with a shot clock this season? Why, yes.
A 35-second clock. Now, it is not every school, but some schools are. They had to notify their league if they were planning to use it no later than October 1st of this year.
And if they're doing it for all of their home regular season varsity games for girls and boys.
Which, on one hand, you think, well, that changes like the fairness of competition if half your games are using a shot clock and half of them aren't, which I think is fair to say.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, this is needed. I really do think this is needed. I don't remember.
See, I disagree. I've always been anti-high school basketball shot clock because the people who make the argument for it point to those very rare games where teams just sit with the ball on their hip and the game ends like 4-2. And like every year you see a game like that from somewhere in America,
right,
where there's a team that stands with the ball on their hip and the other team is sitting back in the zone and won't go guard them, so there's no action for a quarter or a half or 3 quarters, and the game ends like 6-4. And that's appalling. That's gross. You know how to prevent that? Go play some defense. Get out of that cowardly zone and play some defense.
There were games.
Well, okay. Well, to that point, I'm sorry to cut you off, Spencer, but to that point, one, the coaches who do that, you're right. That's wrong. It does not happen often. I don't remember any stories of that happening in Kansas.
And I've never,
for the most part.
Like, I've been covering high school basketball for 17 years. I've never been a part of a game like that.
And I'm glad that it is very uncommon. And the coaches who teach their kids to go do those things and they want to win a game 4-2 or whatever, they might not deal with that in this earthly realm, but when St. Peter tells them whether to go in or out of the gates of heaven, they will have to deal with that punishment then.
Brendan said that, not me.
Now, what I will say, to the same point about zone, I am a believer. I saw people talking about this on Twitter the other day, in fact, that if you're teaching kids zone, beyond like, hey, we're teaching you the fundamentals of basketball, so we're going to teach you what 2-3 zone is, and like, hey, guys, run 2-3, like just so you can like learn what it is. Fine, whatever. If your whole strategy is we're going to have high schoolers or junior high kids or whatever play zone, cowardly. I agree completely. It's not preparing kids to play basketball at any other level. I think the same thing applies to not playing with a shot clock. If you ever go on to play basketball anywhere else other than the rec, you're going to play with a shot clock.
Sure.
I like that it is long. I thought originally it was 40, actually. So I'm happy that it's 35 or longer. I think that's a good thing. I don't want, like, thank God it's not a 24-second clock, because that'd be terrible. That really would be awful.
Yeah.
But I do think this is going to benefit the actual, like, skill development for some of these teams. And it is going to force some teams to change the way they play. I know we've covered games for teams that like to say, like, all right, when we get to a minute, once we get the ball at a minute or less, we're holding for the final shot. No matter if it's 59 seconds or it's 29 seconds, we're holding for one.
We have to limit the number of possessions in this game, because possession by possession, the more possessions there are, the more it's going to benefit the team with more talent.
Right.
Like, it's one thing to think that, and then when you put that into practice, you can put that into practice and play like a 38-33 kind of game, which I don't have a problem with in high school basketball. It might not be the most aesthetically pleasing, but I think that's a strategy more than, well, this other team's not guarding us, so I'm just going to stand here near half court. That's anti-competitive.
Yeah.
And you get rid of that with the shot clock. But I've always been against it in high school. I do. I think I think no shot clock levels the playing field a little bit in a way that I think promotes competition and gives teams with lesser talent an ability to, if they can play ball control and take their time and make the most of the possessions they have, and they can maybe win a greasy 36-33 game. I don't have a problem with that. Although I did one time call a girls' basketball game in Nebraska that ended 20-19, and I'm telling you, that wasn't because the pace of the game was slow. That was just the worst basketball game I've ever watched. Like, you can go back, and I have saved a lot of my tape. I've been very fortunate to have remembered to press record a lot. And I have a lot of my tape going back to my early days as a broadcaster, like even college radio stuff. I still have kicking around. I have the tape of that broadcast of the game that ended 20-19. Sometimes I go back and listen to it just to hear the disgust dripping off of my voice in the final 15 seconds of that game. It was very unbecoming of a young broadcaster. I was mad at those girls.
There's a coach in West Virginia that I covered when I was there. He's been there for 30 years now, close to 30 years. And his strategy is basically in the fourth quarter, if his team scores 5 points in that quarter and they're winning, he's okay with it.
Just muck it up.
Yeah,
I don't
just
like that.
Around a four corners, just going back and forth.
Yeah,
the last few minutes of the game.
Yeah,
it gets boring to call. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I don't like the.
I believe that.
I don't like the four corners either. But they put Dean Smith in the Hall of Fame. Like, it worked, right? It may not have been aesthetically pleasing, but he's in the Hall of Fame.
Is basketball better now than it was then?
Yeah. Well, yes and no.
Depends on your perspective.
Yes.
Depends on how old you are, probably.
Now everybody just shoots corner threes, and nobody plays a distinct style of basketball anymore. It's just jack up threes. That's more of an NBA problem than it is like a high school or college problem, though. I will say that.
Yeah, we don't have to get into NBA versus college basketball. My probably hottest sports take of any, too many guys make too many shots in the NBA. Like, too many shots go in.
No, it's time to move. We need a dead ball era of the NBA. We need to move the 3-point line back.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, it's time to move. Like, we can't have, like, Mo Bamba made a corner three last night for the other night for the Clippers in game I was watching. They're playing the Nuggets, and he hit a corner three. Mo Bamba looks like a skeleton when he shoots the basketball.
Yeah,
like a wacky waving inflatable arm flailing tube man made a three. That should never happen. There should not be a range from which Mo Bamba can hit from three.
It's the pitcher dilemma in baseball, right? Like, well, why don't guys just hit the other way? Why don't guys lay down a bunt? It's the same thing in the NBA, right? Why don't guys you play defense anymore? Because Luka Doncic is 6'9" and can shoot the ball blindfolded from 40 feet and swishes it in 8 out of 10 times. Like, it's so challenging to do. That yes, I'm in favor of doing something there, and it's why I still prefer the college game. I have a more of an emotional attachment to my favorite team in college than the NBA, but I like that there are different styles.
Yes.
Not every game looks the same for 40 minutes.
Yes.
And like there's great play, but I like the fact that things are still different. That's why a lot of people like college football over the NFL.
Yeah, agreed. 100%. Anyway, let's get into what we were going to talk about this hour. Still to come here in the 4 o'clock hour. We're going to talk to Michael Swain of Fog.net, part of the 24/7 Sports Network.
Finally bringing some intelligence to this show.
Yeah, so well overdue. We'll have Michael on, get his thoughts on the latest Jayhawk happenings. We'll also have another round of What Is Wrong With You. But speaking of the Jayhawks, there are 82 bowl-eligible teams in college football. That worked out really nice because there are 41 bowls. So, well, I guess there aren't 41 bowls, but there are 41. There were 82 slots for bowl-eligible teams, and they have been neatly filled with 82 teams that went 6-6 or better.
Yep.
Kansas Jayhawks were not one of them, and that was not how this season was supposed to go. They finished 5-7, could not sufficiently recover from starts of 1-5 and 2-6. Did win 3 straight over ranked teams as an unranked team, which is fairly unprecedented in college football history, but weren't able to seal the deal. Lost to Baylor in their finale on Saturday, and so the Jayhawks are not going bowling after 2 straight years of an upward trajectory for the program under Lance Leipold. This year represents a step back in a significant way. And what I think makes it most frustrating is this wasn't like Oklahoma State, where it was just total and complete meltdown to the point where the team that you saw wearing the Cowboys uniforms in week 10 was unrecognizable. No, this Kansas team, like, they stayed fairly healthy. They had all their guys out there for all 12 games, all their talented dudes making plays week after week, and you saw what it could be at its best. It's another thing you didn't see with a team like Oklahoma State or UCF or Utah, to name some other Big 12 disappointments this year, where they just never looked like the team they were supposed to be. Kansas absolutely looked like the team they were supposed to be for stretches of games and that 3-week stretch of the season where they beat Iowa State and they beat BYU and they beat Colorado. But too often this team was its own worst enemy. And the end result is you don't go to a bowl, which, again, a step back that I think there's a broader question about whether this program could afford that kind of step back in this season going into next year when you've got a lot of uncertainty about who's going to play, number one, because who's going to come back. He had so many seniors, 38 of them. And number two, okay, the games are moving back onto campus. Is the enthusiasm going to be the same as it was the last time games were on campus in Lawrence? So those are the big questions I have. Kind of, that's an existential question, I guess, for KU. But to put those on the back burner for a second, why could this team not be its best self for more than just that 3 weeks towards the end? What was the fatal flaw?
I don't know that there was one. I think there are a number of things you can point to. This was brought up in the YouTube comments. I believe it was Mark B a little bit ago who proposed this idea. And I believe this wholeheartedly. And I said as much at the start of the year. I do not think Jalen Daniels was healthy for most of the season. And maybe he was healthy. I do not think he was right. I do not think he was himself. I do not think he was the guy we saw for a little over half a season in 22 and for 3 games last year. I do not think that he was that guy. He was laboring a little bit when he threw. His decision-making was bizarre relative to how smart of a decision maker he's been for most of his collegiate career. He was behind on a lot of throws, which he never had been before. I don't think he was right, and I think that made things different for the offense early on. I think the Jeff Grimes addition or replacing Andy Kotelnicki with Jeff Grimes, I think, was problematic for this team for myriad reasons.
It was a downgrade, yeah.
And I think that KU found a little bit of a rhythm later in the season, and there were some things that worked. And, oh, wow, unbelievable. Giving the ball 1,000,000 times to number 4 actually worked. I nearly freaking teared up today reading Devin Neal's goodbye post on social media because, like, man, I feel so bad I'm just sad that he's never going to play in a KU uniform again. I'm happy for him. He's going to make a lot of money and play for a long time in the NFL. But, man, I'm going to miss him playing at KU. Give him the ball a lot. Why are you only giving him 12 touches in a game? It just was curious decision-making at best, downright bad decision-making and game planning at worst. I think some guys just didn't perform up to the level you hoped they would perform up to. And that goes on both sides of the ball. The defense, sort of talked about this with the Packers a little bit earlier on. Like, taking the ball away and making the splash plays defensively was never the problem for KU. The problem was the down-to-down stuff and just giving up chunks. Even in the BYU game, when the defense came up with the big stop late and had the defensive plays, the big interceptions of Jake Retzloff and all of that, let's not forget BYU kind of did whatever they wanted between the 20s. I mean, they moved the ball in chunks during that game for the most part. So there were concerns there. And I know that doesn't directly answer your question, Dan. Like, there's no one specific thing, but I think it was too many things that were just a little bit off that all together made the whole thing kind of fall apart.
Do you think there should be significant staff changes moving forward?
Should there be? I think there's a good argument for it. Will there be? I'm doubtful. I don't think KU is the kind of program that can just dump coordinators after a year. I like, KU's not hurting for money, but also, like, you brought Jeff Grimes in, as far as I'm aware, on a multiple year contract. I assume more than one of those years was guaranteed for a guy of his reputation and his pedigree. I think he will probably be back. Brian Borland, I don't know. Brian Borland is older. He has been with Lance Leipold forever. I have a hard time believing that Lance Leipold is going to fire Brian Borland, especially after the Kotelnicki issue last year, when Leipold was clearly hurt by it. I mean, you don't have to read between that many lines during his press conferences and media availabilities after Kotelnicki left to pick up on the fact that Lance Leipold was not happy about that. Thought if he was going to leave, he was going to go be a head coach somewhere, not go to a different Power 4 school in the same position. I think that hurt him. That leads me to believe he is not going to then fire the guy who has been the most loyal to him over the course of his head coaching career. Now, would he retire? Would he elect to step down? Would someone else in the athletic department say, hey, Brian, we got to go in a different direction? I don't know. He is the one I would assume is probably more likely on the way out than Jeff Grimes. That's just a guess. That's not inside information. That's just me guessing and me making an assumption. I hope there's some level of change because this wasn't good enough. I mean, you had too much talent to be 5-7 this year. Now, to your points and questions about this team going forward, though, I think KU can be a bowl team again next year. I don't think KU is going to contend for the Big 12 championship next year.
Those will certainly not be the expectation.
No.
Not there. 38 seniors depart, and not just like the headline guys like Jalen Daniels and Luke Grimm and Devin Neal. A lot of real solid guys up front, guys like Cornell Wheeler, who was so influential on defense. J.B. Brown's another guy. You got to replace some.
Your two starting corners. Playmakers. I know they're stars, but still.
Yeah,
Woodkey's out. He was a key guy this year.
Yeah, Dotson, Bryant, you mentioned Marvin Grant's another one. That's a lot to replace.
Yep.
Does KU hit the portal a little harder this year to try and make sure that they maintain a floor and get some experience in? Or is this a program that looks at what they have and says, we need to be a player development program, and that means we need to trust some of our own guys. We need to trust some of our own recruits. Instead of going portaling hard at wide receiver, maybe we need to see if Keaton Kubeka can play. Like, just to use one example.
I'm sorry to do this. I think it's both. I think there are certain places where KU has got to hit the portal. Michael Swain, who we're going to talk to here in about 12 minutes or so, he has said, and I don't think this is like secret news or VIP stuff or anything, like KU is going to go hit the portal for wide receivers. And we know that KU has already put out a few offers for portal wide receivers because everybody else in the receiver room is really young. Who's coming back? Doug Emillion. He's one of your key guys who's coming back. I don't think Trevor Wilson is. He might have one more year. I don't remember. I think there's one other guy who's actually played who's got another year. But Grimm and Arnold and Skinner, the guys who have been the core of your offense, they are all gone. So you've got to go get a veteran presence to play wide receiver. We know they're going to hit it there. KU has not been afraid to go hit the portal for offensive linemen in a pinch. Wouldn't be shocked if there's some depth that's added that way.
Sure.
I think defensively you have to. I know there are a lot of guys on the other side of the ball. Jalen Todd played a little bit at the end of the year. I think Jalen Todd is going to be a really good player for this KU team. They've recruited corner really, really well. I don't think they need to go get some help there. KU needs better linebacker play. I would expect there will be some Porter offers there. In fact, we already know KU had a portal commitment, Bengali Kamara, the South Carolina and Pitt transfer. He's already in. So I think KU might hit that spot again. But for the most part, when you're talking about who are the core guys going to be, It's going to be homegrown quarterbacks. Maybe if Daniels leaves, because Daniels can take another year.
Mhm.
If he does leave and you don't feel like Ballard or Marshall, specifically Marshall, is ready to take over yet, probably go portaling. You probably try to get Miller Moss from USC.
Sure.
Like,
Yeah.
is he great? No. Can he run the offense KU wants to run competently? Probably. Like, you go search for a guy like that. But your running backs, they added a transfer, the Iowa transfer. But you've also got like 8 dudes who are all freshmen or redshirt freshmen who are going to play a ton for you.
Yeah.
Wide receivers, you mentioned Keaton Quebec. He put on Twitter, it was either today or last night, like, sucked I was injured all year, but I'm ready to get back to the grind. Some people thought he might transfer out. Sounds like he's back. There's a number of young guys in the wide receiver room, tons of potential. What are they going to be? You have to find that out. I actually love the offensive line coming back for next year, to be honest. That's maybe the only spot that I truly love. But I think it's a mix of both. You need to supplement with veterans, but you need the guys you have spent a lot of energy and capital to get commitments from out of high school. You need them to step up. That's got to be your core.
I hate to be the Debbie Downer here, but it's college football. It's 2024. The portal is going to giveth, but it's also going to taketh away. So
Kansas has done a pretty good job.
There's
going
to be somebody you're not expecting to leave, though. That's going to leave. I feel like that happens every year in every college team. Somebody you're expecting to stay leaves.
I understand your point, Spencer, but that really didn't happen for KU last year. There was the defensive tackle ended up at Auburn,
Gage Keys, who, by the way, is in the portal. And if you go check his Twitter, the only team he's talking about on social media is the Kansas Jayhawks. Now, I'm not saying that he's coming back, but it's been whispered for a while. Kind of regretted leaving. Which would be great. Like, that's what we're talking about. Like, okay, we need defensive line help. Boom, instant starter, go, set. Well, he also knows the system. That certainly helps.
That helps.
So yeah, Spencer, to your point, I think you're right, and I would not be surprised. Like, if one of those young wide receivers says, hey, look, new quarterback, I don't know that I have a great relationship with Ballard, Marshall, Daniels, whoever. Let's go try something new. Certainly possible. But that's where KU's NIL approach comes into play. KU doesn't give freshmen, like, hey, $500K if you come to KU. Transfer. $500K if you pick us. They use that mostly for player retention, and I think that's where it comes into play. And if that doesn't work this offseason, well, then you got to reconsider things.
Yeah.
So I think the bigger question, to wrap a bow on this, I guess the question moving forward is, KU's certainly going to have to start to use its own guys from the last couple of years. They're going to be younger next year, I guess, is the point. If they stay, if they don't bring in a huge haul of portal veterans, they're going to be a much younger team next year, which you would term a rebuilding year. What does rebuilding look like for Kansas given the state of the program now? Does rebuilding look like 5-7 again or 6-6? Does rebuilding look worse than that? Can they afford rebuilding to be 3-9, 4-8? Or are they looking at, we got to do whatever we can to get the forward momentum back going, and we're going to have to get older. We're going to have to hit the portal hard. We're going to have to go find a veteran starting quarterback because we can't abide 2 straight years of missing a bowl, because then it costs us all of our forward momentum from the previous 2 years. So that's the question. I think Lance Leipold is very much a stay-the-course head coach. I think there would be buy-in in the building if that is the way they choose to go. Stay the course. Let's blood in our young guys. Let's see what we have in the program, and let's give it a run as some underdogs next year, and let's see what we've got in-house. I think there's buy-in in the building. Is there buy-in on the campus? Is there buy-in in Lawrence? Is there buy-in among the alumni to have another year where potentially you don't go to a bowl next year? Because there will be a lot of people, like, just looking at what's coming back on the roster next year, that won't be the expectation that KU goes bowling, but they can do it. And if Lance Leipold's the developmental coach that I think he is, sure, I think it's reasonable to expect that KU can get back to 500 and get back bowling next year. But that's the decision they're going to have to make. There's a fork in the road moment here for Kansas. No question about it after this disappointing year. We're going to get more thoughts on that from Michael Swain coming up in a bit. First, what is wrong with you next on 580 Sports Talk? It's What Is Wrong With You time on 580 Sports Talk. 2 new stories today trying to take down our current champion, Tony Pajamontana, the drug dealer in England who was hiding in his pajamas in his closet when police raided his home. And he was eventually found, but also had his drugs on him when he was found, which is a very stupid thing to have done.
With cash and a cell phone also in the same room. It is very hard to come up with a better name than Lion Snitch in the Wardrobe. But Tony Pajamontana is really, really, really good. Shout out to Jeffrey on YouTube who had that one.
Really strong entry. My story today, we go to Memphis, Tennessee, where a woman stabbed her daughter and grandson on Thanksgiving. 55-year-old LaShunda Johnson was arrested after Memphis Police Department responded to an aggravated assault at a South Memphis address. The main victim, the daughter, had been arguing with her mother after she pushed the victim's son. The victim said she looked away, and then Johnson charged her with a knife she had gotten from the kitchen. Johnson fled the scene, was later located elsewhere where she was placed in custody. The daughter sustained an abrasion to her left hand. A grandson received a stab wound in his left hand near his thumb. According to the victim, Johnson was drinking and possibly heavily intoxicated at the time of the incident.
Mm-hmm.
She's been charged with aggravated assault and domestic assault.
Yikes.
Did you think the grandson had something bad to say about Granny's green bean casserole or
Probably.
sweet potatoes? This wasn't hitting on nothing, Grandma. Oh, yeah? They hit you with something. This knife.
Spencer, what you got today?
We're going to Central Florida, to Polk County, Florida, to be exact. A Central Florida man was arrested after he accidentally forgot the fake identity he used to evade law enforcement, leading to his arrest. The incident occurred when the suspect, who had previously provided a false name to police during an encounter, was pulled over by Polk County deputies for another traffic violation. During the stop, he mistakenly used the same false identity but was unable to recall key details about it, prompting the officers to realize the deception. Deputies say 54-year-old Richard Hallmark of Winter Haven told PCSO Sergeant during a traffic stop that his name was actually Robert Hallmark. Authorities quickly discovered that the man had been using a fabricated name to avoid prior legal issues.
Real master disguise.
Including warrants for his arrest. After further investigation, they identified him and placed him under arrest.
That is that is not a very good fake name.
Yeah.
Like there's not much.
Same first initial, same last name.
Yeah.
Excuse me. I'm going to vote for this to win today. I'm actually going to vote for this to win our week. Your fake identity was the same initials and same last name of your real identity? And you couldn't even remember the fake details?
I found more information about this story.
We don't really have the time for it. I think
he had drugs in his backpack.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we have time for that detail. Yeah.
Just that little small detail.
Yeah, that gets my weekly win.
Yeah, I think we're going to go with the master disguise here. You can't forget your own fake ID. That's going to be our winner. What is wrong with you? Michael Swain is next on 580 Sports Talk. We are joined on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits Hotline by Michael Swain of Fog.net, part of the 24/7 Sports Network for Jayhawk Weekly. Michael joins us every Tuesday on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits Hotline here on 580 Sports Talk. Michael, it would have been very hard to comprehend if you'd gone back in time and told us back in August that this KU team would not go to a bowl game, finishing at 5-7. If you had to point to the biggest reason, structurally, talent-wise, whatever the case may be, the biggest reason that this Kansas team failed to meet expectations, what would it be?
Oh, man. The crazy part is, right, I think this season has so many ebbs and flows that it really is impossible to pin it on one thing. But look, if you think back to the start of the season and the way things went for Jalen Daniels against Illinois, UNLV, and even against West Virginia to some degree, man, if the Jalen Daniels of November shows up in September, I think you're talking about a very different ball game and a very different team. Because I think if you get a confident Jalen Daniels to start the year, that obviously is going to do so much for you. And maybe games like the TCU game don't happen. Maybe he is able to improve in an Arizona State performance is slightly better, and you're able to carve out a little bit more margin there. So, look, it's not fair to put it on one person or one thing when you can look at the collective and just say KU's offense wasn't good enough in the first part of the season and KU's defense was not good enough in the second part of the season. And you put that together and it's really hard to go and win, 8, 9, 10 games like some of these upper Big 12 teams have when you're not playing complementary football, and KU didn't. So I think that's probably where my head is at. I look at the quarterback play KU got, and if they got better quarterback play early, KU's at least making a bowl game.
How heavily do you expect the Jayhawks to hit the transfer portal? Every team is going to obviously do their due diligence on guys and try and help their roster and add veterans. Do you think that KU will be unusually reliant on getting transfer portal talent, veteran guys to come in and try and have a quick reboot and quick turnaround? Or do you think that they will be maybe more quick to rely on the internal improvements of some guys they've already recruited?
Well, it's going to be a mixture of both. KU's not going to do a Colorado where you're going to really rebuild an entire team in an off season. But look, the transfer portal additions have gone down over time. And I think this off season for KU is going to be a lot closer to maybe, you think back to what maybe the 2022 off season was for KU, right? That's when they added, guys like Craig Young, Kalen Gervin, guys like that, Lonnie Phelps. And I think you're going to see much more like that, where I think that class had 15 portal players. I was looking right before we jumped on, actually, and KU's got about 12 spots right now, and that's before you even get into players transferring out and maybe some NFL decisions for someone like Logan Brown. Does Jalen Daniels stick around? So, and KU's already got 2 commits, right? Bengali Kamara and LaShawn Williams are 2 guys who are already on board. So I think you're looking at this class being in kind of that 15-man range. And look, last year's transfer class was like 11, and the one before was like 12 or 13. So I think this one's going to be a lot closer to 2022 in that it's just going to be more portal guys because you need that, right? You can't all of a sudden go roll into next year with a bunch of redshirt freshmen, redshirt sophomores playing that haven't played before. You're risking having an Iowa State season in 2022 where they went, 3-9? Because they were playing all of those young players. So I think KU needs to try and avoid that. And they're going to go in the portal and try and get guys that can, for lack of a better term, serve as bridge players and fill some gaps and be guys that can come in, maybe have a year or two, and then provide that platform to continue to have success before the, quote unquote, pipeline starts with the high school kids.
Michael Swain is our guest. He covers the Kansas Jayhawks for Fog.net and 24/7 Sports. Go be a VIP. Absolutely worth it to get all the best insight into what's going on with KU athletics. You can also find Michael across social media on both Twitter and Blue Sky. He joins us every Tuesday at this time on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits hotline. In terms of guys leaving the program, Michael, we were talking about this a little bit earlier on this hour. KU has been very good about being able to retain players, have not lost many key guys to the transfer portal over time. Know that Keaton Quebeca earlier today, he said, hey, I'm looking forward to coming back. Meanwhile, Brian Dilworth, the cornerback, said he is going into the portal. How much worry do you have about guys leaving this roster going into the offseason?
Well, I think you always have worry. If you told me after the day after the Cincinnati game that Armajé Reed Adams and Gage Keys would be playing in the SEC, at the start of this season, I would have said, man, that's a little surprising. Not because they can't play there. They're both good players, but it felt like KU wasn't going to be a team that loses a lot. And I think this day and age, I think you just kind of got to think that you're going to lose one or two starters to the portal because another team is going to come in. And with the way things go these days, there's a lot can be figured out and said before a player even enters the transfer portal. So player retention has been key, and KU did put a lot of effort and money into keeping this roster together. And I think it's going to be a little similar this year. The revenue sharing thing is going to equally simplify and complicate things because a school has money now with the revenue sharing. The question is how much. And I don't think we're ever going to find that out from KU. I don't think Travis Goff's going to walk out and say, this is how much we're putting into rev share this year. But I think it's going to help KU that there is more money coming from the university players. About some of the guys that can come back. I think getting Logan Brown and Bryce Foster has to be the number 2 and 3 priorities behind Jalen Daniels, because if you were able to retain those 2 offensive linemen, you're building an offensive line that already has basically 3 returning starters and a 4th if you want to count Calvin Clement. So I think KU's going to be in a position where they should be able to keep a lot of players, but this portal is so unpredictable that it's hard to come out here and say, yeah, KU's going to retain everybody they want to retain, because it's just hard to do that.
Do you expect both coordinators, Grimes and Borland, to return in 2025?
Well, yes on Grimes. I don't think there's any chance about the offensive coordinator next year. I really don't know if Brian Borland. If you look at the contract, he is technically out of contract. It goes through March, and that's how a lot of contracts are working. But 2024 season was his last. Now he does have an option for 2025. But if you are talking about schools and universities across the country being a little hesitant to pay buyouts right now because of the revenue share, this would certainly present an opportunity if it's possible to go in a different direction to go and do that. Will that happen? I don't know yet. And I think that's something that I have to be thinking about, and we'll have to see how it plays out. I think you can make arguments really on both sides. I think one argument is probably a little bit stronger than the other, but we'll just see how it plays out.
Moving over from football to basketball, as we're joined by Michael Swain of Fog.net for Jayhawk Weekly here on 580 Sports Talk. KU versus Creighton, true road game this week for the Jayhawks, coming up tomorrow. Fun matchup, 2 really good regional programs. I'm looking forward to this. Now, Ryan Kalkbrenner for Creighton, he's banged up, probably going to play, but not 100% certain. So here's my key Ryan Kalkbrenner question for you, Michael. Is he good or is he tall?
That's really funny. I think he's tall. And he takes advantage of it. I don't know if he is going to go down as, the most skilled, guy you're ever going to see. But man, he is very good at using his size. And you look at the shot block numbers, you look at what he's able to do. He's just a really important player for them. And I think he would provide a little bit of a interesting matchup with Hunter Dickinson insofar as his height and length. You got to shoot over him, and that would be something that would be a good test for Hunter. And on the other end, he would definitely give Hunter a run for his money in the post. So he's a key player for Creighton. If he doesn't play, there's no excuse for Kansas not to go in and win the game. Potentially by double digits. But if he's playing, Creighton has the makings of a team that can kind of go crazy on you one night from 3. And I think KU fans are probably thinking, yep, and that's going to be our luck that, the one time you go and play Creighton, So we'll have to see. But I think Kalkbrenner's a good player. But yeah, I'm not sure if he's a whole lot more than a guy that's 7'1" and is good at being 7'1".
A couple more questions for Michael Swain of Fog.net, part of the 24/7 Sports Network here on Jayhawk Weekly on 580 Sports Talk. How important is it for this KU team to get a road test at this stage, particularly for some of their guys who are maybe coming from mid-major conferences or a freshman like Flory Badunga to play on the road in an environment like the Chi Health Center is going to be in Omaha?
Yeah, it's another benchmark, right? And you think about the first benchmark being the Arkansas game, and that's obviously a huge thing that Kansas did was go and play that one. That KU didn't really pass that test. And it is something now where you look at this being the next opportunity to show how much the team has grown. Is this the most intense environment KU play in this year? No. I'd argue probably some days might be. But it's going to be really in the span of a week. You're going to get 2 tests at different levels of this to showcase where your team is at and how guys like, David Coit, Zeke Mayo, AJ Storr, how they are able to play in these games. Because you look back at the Arkansas one and those guys, and you want to add Flory in there, you can. They didn't play great. And so can you go out there and show that you are more comfortable in these settings? And that's going to go a long way because the Big 12, KU's going to play in a lot of tough road environments in the Big 12 this year. So you're right. It's another test for KU. And I do think it comes at a good time where KU's had some chances to, I think, play some of these bye games, tweak some things, and then also kind of test yourself against the upper echelon of the sport with Champions Classic, the home and home with Carolina, and then playing Duke.
Last thing, Michael, National Signing Day is tomorrow, and it doesn't carry the same intrigue that it used to. We've talked about that in years past, but what should KU fans be watching for on National Signing Day tomorrow?
Yeah, it's so weird nowadays, right? With the way that, they keep tweaking the schedule. And right now, like, typically college coaches would be out on the road, but they're not because they move signing day up 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks. So it creates a lack of drama because all the drama has unfolded over the last kind of 2 weeks when there's been flips and new commitments and stuff like that. So right now I'm expecting a smooth day for KU. And I think it's one of those where it shouldn't be too much drama, and one that everything should probably be wrapped up by 11 a.m. and Lance Leipold will have his press conference at noon, and everyone will go about their merry way. So it should be a pretty stress-free day for the KU coaches and us beat writers who are covering recruiting like nobody else.
The most important aspect of it, obviously. Michael Swain.
Yeah, exactly.
Michael Swain of Fog.net, part of the 24/7 Sports Network, joins us every week on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits Hotline for Jayhawk Weekly. Check out his work. It is indispensable if you are a Jayhawk fan. Become a VIP at 24/7 Sports today at Fog.net. Michael, always appreciate it. We'll talk to you next week.
Awesome. Sounds great. Talk to you next week.
That is Michael Swain. We'll take a break. Come back, wrap up this hour of 580 Sports Talk after this word from our friend Brendan.
Yes, I've got some great news for you from our good friends over at Calhoun's Jewelers. The winter sale is going on right now. You've heard my stories for years about all the Calhoun's has done for myself, for my wife, for our family, and now they can help you make those memories that will last a lifetime as well. The entire store, up to 60% off. So go check them out, 1801 Southwest Gage Boulevard here in Topeka, or check them out online for their winter sale at calhounsjewelers.com.
Our thanks again to Michael Swain of fog.net for joining us for Jayhawk Weekly. Matt Verderame joined us earlier on the program today. If you missed any of those interviews or anything we do on the show here on a daily basis, of course, the video archive is always available on our YouTube channel, 580 Sports Talk, and on Facebook, WIBW News. You can also check out podcast versions of the show, hour-by-hour breakdowns. You can find those on our website, 580WIBW.com. And you can also listen to us on Spotify. Search 580 Sports Talk on Spotify, and you can listen to us where you listen to all of your other favorite podcasts. You a big podcast guy, Spencer?
Yes, in a way, yes. I try as much. I'm a big music guy too, so I try to split my time.
What is your number one favorite podcast?
Oh, it's got to be Beltway Football Podcast.
Okay, all right, a team-specific podcast.
Yes.
My favorite is, I got a lot of favorites, but my favorite is The Right Time with Bomani Jones. That's my favorite podcast. Your favorite podcast, though, could be 580 Sports Talk. You can listen to us on Spotify and with all those other great podcasts that we have just recommended to you. Subscribe and leave us a 5-star review, too, if you do listen to us on Spotify. Coming up in the 5 o'clock hour, headlines, some Royals trade ideas, and Ask Dan Anything coming up on 580 Sports Talk. Let's get it. Final hour of the day here on 580 Sports Talk. So good to be with you this afternoon in the capital city here on 580 WIBW, FM 104.9, online at 580WIBW.com. And on our video stream, you can watch us on YouTube. The channel is 580 Sports Talk. You can watch us on Facebook and leave comments at WIBW News. We're down to just two of us the rest of the way, myself, Dan Lucero, and Spencer Dupuis, and Spencer will take an early powder as well. Brendan Dworzinski is on his way to Skinny Sports Bar and Grill for the rare Tuesday edition of the Washburn Basketball Coaches Show. Why Tuesday, you ask? Well, it's a long trip for the Bods this week. They are leaving Wednesday for their Western swing. They are at Kearney on Thursday night, at Hayes on Saturday afternoon. So they're getting a jump on their bus travel. Brendan will host the program tonight and talk to the coaches of the Ichabods, Brett Ballard and Laura Wessling. That's at Skinny Sports Bar and Grill from 6 to 7 tonight. You can join Brendan and the gang at Skinny's. You should totally do that if you're in the capital city. Skinny Sports Bar and Grill, where every day is game day. Or you can listen. If you can't make it out there, you can hear it on the home of the Ichabods, our sister station, Country 106.9. That will be Brendan's last official act as the voice of the Ichabods for the month of December as he prepares to take his paternity leave. I will be filling in Brendan's shoes Thursday and Saturday for some Ichabod basketball. So I am going to drive out to Kearney, Nebraska on Thursday afternoon. Have you ever been I shouldn't ask. I know you had never been across the Mississippi River before. Or was it Missouri River you hadn't crossed? Was it it was the Mississippi. Okay, yeah, I think it had been west of the Mississippi. I should stop asking you then if you have been to places that I know that you have not been to. And on the one hand, I'm just being conversational, but on the other hand, like, I know these things. Anyhow, Kearney, Nebraska. I have made the trip many times. Of course, used to work out even further west in Nebraska than that back in the earlier portion of my career. Looking forward to seeing the arch. They've got a walkway, like an arch just outside of town to the east.
Interesting.
Like a not like the Gateway Arch. Just like they've got like some history, like exhibits and such.
The gateway to the little small town of
the Archway in Kearney. What do they call it? The Great Platte River Road Archway Monument.
There you go. There's your answer.
Yes, it houses a historical experience that tells the story of Nebraska and the Platte River Valley in the development of America. It thinks very highly of itself.
And it's a bustling college town, isn't it?
Yes, it most certainly is, Kearney, Nebraska. Certainly bustling compared to North Platte, where I lived and worked for 4 years. Anyhow, always glad to return to places I have been in the past. The Health and Sciences Center, Buckle Court, by the way. You're familiar with Buckle?
Like the company?
Like the store.
Yeah.
Yes, they corporate partners with UNK.
Oh.
Yeah, I think it might be headquartered in Kearney.
Interesting.
Yeah. Buckle Court at the Health and Sciences Center at Nebraska Kearney. I'll be there Thursday, so Brendan and Spencer will have the show that day. And then I will be back on Friday. Anyhow, that's all for later on. Anyhow, in the final hour of 580 Sports Talk today, I've got some trade ideas for the Royals because it sounds like if they add another bat, and they need to, it's going to be via trade. That is the suggestion of the hardworking MLB reporters over at The Athletic. And I have two ideas for them that are players who play in the other Central Division that their respective teams would very much like to trade, would very much like to be rid of the contracts. The Royals can, I think, afford another big deal, another big contract on the books. They might like to have the trading teams pay a little bit of money down, but it's worth it if you're really in a contending window to go out and make a big move and go get a veteran bat. And I have a couple of ideas for the Royals that I will share with you. And also, I'll do an Ask Me Anything because Spencer's got to leave here in just a little bit. So it's just going to be me for the final half hour-ish of the show. And I'll take some questions from those of you who are watching on YouTube. Again, the live chat feature on our YouTube channel, 580 Sports Talk, or you can comment on the Facebook page, WIBW News, or you can send a text to the show. The text line is open. 785-272-9429 is the text line number. Send me your questions. sports related, not sports related, and I'll get to them. I haven't done one of those in a long time, so we'll do that. It is, after all, Tuesday. We do Random Question Tuesday, so I feel like it's in the spirit of the show to take some random questions from the listening audience as we close out this Tuesday on 580 Sports Talk. But we began, as we always do, with the 580 Sports Talk headlines, and we start today with sad news to report that former Kansas State offensive lineman and assistant coach Dana Dimel passed away in his sleep on Tuesday at the age of 62. Dana Dimel was a 20-year member of the coaching staff at Kansas State under Bill Snyder, and was also an All-American offensive tackle for K-State from 1984 to 1986. He was the offensive coordinator most recently in Manhattan, 9 seasons, 2009 to 2017, as the OC. His son, Winston, also played for the program, of course, during that time, was part of 12 bowl teams during his 19 seasons in Manhattan. Also was a head coach for 3 years at Wyoming, 3 seasons at Houston, and 5 seasons at UTEP recently, 2018 to 2023. Got UTEP to a bowl in 2022, which is no mean feat. And this past year had been on Brett Bielema's coaching staff as an offensive analyst at Illinois. Extremely sad to hear of Dana Dimel's passing. You have never heard a negative thing about Dana Dimel, the person. Everybody who has ever been around him, everybody who has covered Kansas State sports has wonderful things to say about Dana Dimel. That, of course, includes current and former K-State head coaches who released statements today. Bill Snyder saying, quote, "Obviously, we are very saddened by the passing of Dana. He was a special friend and coaching companion. I admired his passion for helping his players and fellow coaches. He was a big part of the development of the Kansas State football program, and along with his wife, Julie, very meaningful in the Manhattan community." Current head coach Chris Kleiman saying, quote, "Our thoughts and prayers are with the Dimel family during this difficult time. Dana not only had a big impact on K-State football, but more importantly, the lives of the players, coaches, and staff he interacted with daily, some of which are still in our program today." Very sudden news, very sad news today, the passing of Dana Dimel. Hate to begin the headlines on a low note, but certainly wanted to share that if you had not heard that a well-respected and loved member of the K-State community, the K-State football program, had passed away. Spencer, give us the headline.
Yes, the NFL has suspended Texans linebacker Azeez Al-Shaair for 3 games for his hit on Jags quarterback Trevor Lawrence and the actions that followed. It was reported Monday that he was expected to be suspended. In the statement, the NFL noted his, quote, "repeated violations of rules intended to protect the health and safety of players and promote sportsmanship" is their reasoning for suspending him for 3 games. And that has caused an outrage from the Texans organization. I don't know if you saw their GM.
Yeah, he said it was BS.
Yeah.
I disagree wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
I think that Al-Shaair's a chump. We said it yesterday on the show. He's already been fined this year for throwing a sucker punch at a player, and the hit was terrible. There's no place for that. You look at old films, like you go back, you watch like games the 80s and 90s, and like hits like that are why like Trent Green had his egg scrambled real bad on a play like that. And Steve Young had to retire early because of concussions, and Troy Aikman had to retire because of some concussion issues. Like those hits used to be more common, and they have largely been A, legislated out of the game, and B, made unacceptable. Like we don't watch that and think, "Oh yeah, he got jacked up." We're like, "Hey man, don't need to hit a sliding quarterback like that."
Yeah. He's not expected to appeal it, although he could appeal it. He'd return after their week 17 Christmas Day game against the Ravens. The Texans are on their bye week 14. Then they play the Dolphins in 15 and the Chiefs in week 16.
So I suspect he will be out for the Chiefs game. He'll miss week 17 too.
That's after the club's
a 3-game suspension and not a 3-week suspension. Important to note. So Azeez Al-Shaair will be missing for the better part of the run-in for the Texans here, and well-deserved, richly deserved a 3-game suspension. Hopefully that punishment has the desired effect, and he'll change the way he plays football, because you can't play that like that. Next headline for me, the last team in Major League Baseball to announce their television plans for 2025 was the Kansas City Royals. That's in the past tense because today the Royals released a statement saying that they will remain partnered with Diamond Sports Group for the upcoming 2025 seasons, and their game will air on what is now being known, in case you haven't seen this on your TV guide, the FanDuel Sports Network. Not Bally Sports any longer. The Bally Sports networks have been rebranded as FanDuel Sports. The connection to gambling made more explicit. Most people knew Bally was a gambling thing.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that FanDuel is. So it's just a more explicit tie.
Is it going to be FanDuel Sports Network KC or like?
That would be my expectation, is that it would be, again, like they have in the past where it's Bally Sports Kansas City, or back in the day when it was Fox Sports Kansas City. It would remain FanDuel Sports Kansas City, which ironic. It had been ironic before gambling was legalized in the state of Missouri. Right. So Royals games will continue to be produced and distributed by FanDuel Sports Network, which will continue, I'm reading from the press release here, to deliver live games to fans across cable and satellite, as well as a streaming package directly through the network. In past years, you've been able to pay, I believe it was $19.95 a month, and you could subscribe to be a viewer of Bally Sports, now FanDuel Sports, and you could watch its programming over the internet or on a Roku app, an over-the-top app. You can continue to do that moving forward. You can also do so subscribing through Amazon Prime. The games will be available on Amazon Prime, but you will still have to pay for the subscription on top of what you are already paying for Amazon Prime. So it is not I'm an Amazon Prime customer, now I get the Royals locally. No, that's not how it works. You want to get the Royals locally, you're going to have to pay for the subscription to FanDuel Sports on top of paying for your subscription to Amazon Prime. According to the
Diamondbacks do that, right?
No, the Diamondbacks are produced by Major League Baseball.
Oh.
Yeah, Major League Baseball.
I think they're on Prime, though.
They might be. The Yankees have some games on the Yes Network on Prime, but you still, it's not a situation where if you subscribe to Prime, you get baseball. Like, you still have to subscribe. It's just like a connection to the app, I guess. Apparently, according to this press release, there was a lot of interest in the streaming for the Royals in market last year. The Royals ended last season with more than 40,000 streaming subscribers, with more than half watching games for at least 90 minutes, and experienced the biggest subscriber growth across baseball. The streaming audience grew more than 200% last season. Linear viewership was up more than 30%.
Well, that makes sense.
Effectively, nothing changes.
No.
For Royals fans who are hoping maybe there would be an option to just pay for it through the MLB app, that will not be the case, at least for one more year. You'll still have to go through the Bally Sports app, which I've actually had okay experiences with the Bally Sports app, but I'm the only person I know that's had good experiences with the Bally Sports, now the FanDuel Sports app. So you will have to subscribe through that or through Amazon Prime if you want to watch the Royals streaming in market. But if you have cable or satellite and you have FanDuel Sports Network as part of that, you will still be able to watch the Royals, or you can break off the roughly $20 a month. I believe it was $19.95 a month last year. I don't know if there's an annual price. You get a break on that. I would have to look that up.
But also,
and it's not in the press release.
Are they changing the prices because it's a new network, essentially?
I would doubt it.
And they need more money coming out of the bankruptcy.
The streaming price for the teams that broadcast through MLB or that Major League Baseball owns the broadcast rights, like the Padres, Diamondbacks, Rockies, there are going to be a few more teams this year for whom that is the case. The price has been the same, $19.95 a month. It feels like the lords of that particular realm have decided, $20 a month to stream your favorite team's games, and if that is worth it to you. Maybe it is more worth it to you coming off of a playoff season than it was last year at this time when the Royals were coming off of losing 107 games. I think the Royals are probably banking on that, and maybe Diamond Sports Group is too. Anyhow, do you have another headline for us?
Yes, I do. We'll keep it with the Royals here. They are planning to move Chris Bubich back to the rotation after he came back last year and they moved him to the bullpen because they had a lot of arms that were starters. And now this makes sense why they traded Brady Singer.
So this has been reported by Will Salmon, Katie Wu, and Ken Rosenthal of The Athletic in the same article that I'm going to cite in the segment we've got coming up about some possible Royals trade targets. So nice synergy there. Bubic will apparently be on an innings cap next year. They don't want to drive him much more over 140 and 150 innings, according to the article. But it does sound like Bubic will be the one who gets moved back to the starting rotation. I actually like this. I think it makes more sense to do it for him than do it for Daniel Lynch, because we were starting to see back in the early days of 2023, and it was only 2 starts. So not like we're talking about a huge sample size here, but they were 2 really good starts for Chris Bubic. And he has remade himself as a pitcher thanks to some of the coaching that he's gotten from the Royals over the past couple of seasons. So I felt like internally he was probably the best bet to make that jump to the rotation. I would assume then if he is going to be on a pitch restriction or an inning restriction, I should say, that it would be likely that the Royals try to add another long relief swingman type arm in free agency. Maybe it's somebody like a Michael Lorenzen. Maybe it's the actual Michael Lorenzen. I kind of think a reunion would make a lot of sense. The Royals were just starting to tinker with Lorenzen's arsenal and his pitch mix before he got hurt, and then really didn't pitch for them the rest of the way, unfortunately, after they'd acquired him at the trade deadline. Maybe there's an opportunity for the Royals to reunite with Lorenzen at a reasonable price. Flip side, reasonable price and starting pitching apparently do not go together at this point in free agency. Matthew Boyd got $29 million over the next 2 years from the Chicago Cubs yesterday, in case you missed that particular bit of news. That's the same Matthew Boyd most recently seen pitching for Cleveland, and he pitched well, frankly, for Cleveland after he was signed late in the season. 8 really good starts for them, but has not made more than 15 starts in a season since 2019, and has not pitched more than 78 2/3 of an inning in a season since 2019. And that is a 2-year, $15 million a year pitcher on this market. So if the Royals do want to add a veteran starting pitcher, they're going to have to pay a pretty penny, which is why I think they are counting to an extent on Kyle Wright to pick up some innings for them as a starting pitcher this coming year. And again, you could do worse for a flyer, a guy you've already got under contract, and a guy who won 21 games 3 seasons ago.
Well, it now really appears no Lorenzen coming back.
I wouldn't entirely rule it out. I think they got to wait out the market a little bit. I think when teams are fast to market, you always see big dollars.
Yeah.
And like some of the money's being handed. Tommy Edman getting $15 million a year for 5 years from the Dodgers blew my mind. I could not believe that Tommy Edman is a $15 million player. But if that's the case, then free agency is going to be difficult for teams who might be a little tighter with their purse strings, which again leads to the discussion that we're about to get into, which is in regards to whether or not the Royals should make a trade instead for a middle of the order bat. It's going to cost you money. You're going to have to pay a contract one way or another, but it might be easier to trade for someone who's already got a contract and see if you can't pay some of that money down or get some of that money paid down, buy some of that deferred money with a better prospect than just going to market in what looks like is going to be an inflated free agent market this year. That's the question JJ Piccolo and company have to ask themselves. I have some possible answers for them, and we're going to get to those in the next segment. Also going to do an Ask Me Anything later on this hour, so get your questions in to the YouTube live chat. If you're watching on YouTube, 580 Sports Talk is the YouTube channel. Spencer's got to go. We'll have him back on tomorrow's show. It is me the rest of the way after this timeout. You're listening to 580 Sports Talk. 5:29 on 580 Sports Talk. Half hour left in the program today. Top of the 6 o'clock hour, we'll send it over to the K-State Sports Network for K-State women's basketball. 13th ranked Wildcats hosting Eastern Illinois. And 13 is the number of points Ayoka Lee needs to become the all-time leading scorer in K-State women's basketball history. Honestly, she could get it inside the first 3 minutes. So I would tune in early to catch the action from Bramlage Coliseum tonight if you want to hear history. 6:30, the tip-off from the Octagon, 6 o'clock pregame here on the Sports Voice of Kansas. Coming up in a bit, I'll do an Ask Me Anything. Want to hear from you. You can hit us up, the text line 785-272-9429. You can also get at me in the YouTube live chat if you're still watching on YouTube. Or you can jump in on YouTube just to send me a question if you'd like. Again, the channel is 580 Sports Talk. You can pull it up on your phone and leave a comment, leave a question. Happy to take some questions on a little Ask Me Anything coming up in a bit. But wanted to talk about, we just discussed some news about the Royals in 5A Sports Talk headlines, where the team of MLB insiders at The Athletic is reporting that the Royals are planning to move Chris Bubich back to the rotation. That nugget came from the same article in which this paragraph comes as well, discussing the Royals have already made a move to address their lineup, which they absolutely had to do coming off of last season. And they've already made one move in acquiring Jonathan India from Cincinnati in a trade for Brady Singer. Here's the paragraph. That's where this paragraph picks up. Quote, but the work is not done. Per a team source briefed on Kansas City's moves, the Royals plan to pursue a middle-of-the-order bat and are more likely to acquire that bat through a trade than free agency. This will not rule out the possibility of acquiring another pitcher or bench player, but the priority remains to add a slugger. Middle-of-the-order bat. There are two names that I have in mind that I think would be really good fits as far as bringing in middle-of-the-order bats for the Royals. Now, these are not perfect players. None of these players are perfect, but these are two guys that I think would make a significant difference for the Royals if they were to make a move like that. First guy is Cody Bellinger, former MVP and a current member of the Chicago Cubs. Cody Bellinger won the MVP in 2019 with the Dodgers, and then was miserable for 3 years. 2020 through 2022, he's one of the worst players in baseball. He was okay in the COVID year, but he was a wreck at the plate in 2021 and in 2022. And he went to Chicago on a one-year prove-it deal in 2023, and he was awesome again. He finished top 10 in the MVP voting, hit .307, an .881 OPS, 26 homers, 20 stolen bases, played center field every day for the Cubs, had a great year in 2023. Signed a 3-year deal with 2 opt-outs before the 2024 season. And then last year was just kind of okay. Hit .266, OPS dropped to .751, home runs dropped to 18, RBIs dropped to 78, stolen bases dropped to 9, and he changed positions because the Cubs have a hotshot young center fielder, Pete Crow Armstrong, and that moved Bellinger to the corners, can also play some first base. That's how he came up with the Dodgers. Bellinger picked up his first player option for this coming season. He's got one more for 2026. The player option for 2025 is going to pay him $27.5 million. That's a lot. The player option for 2026, when he turns 30, that's $25 million. So effectively, Cody Bellinger is on a 2-year deal worth $52.5 million. And the Cody Bellinger of 2023 is worth that money. The Cody Bellinger of 2024, not quite. And there are a lot of reports that the Cubs kind of wish he hadn't picked up his option. The outfield picture is getting kind of crowded. They got Ian Happ in left field, a Gold Glover and a solid player. They got Seiya Suzuki, one of their best hitters, in right field. And they're committed to Pete Crow Armstrong in center field for the long haul, who had a really nice second half, young guy. And Michael Busch is the first baseman, who they also really like. So they don't have a ton of room for Cody Bellinger, especially if he's going to perform in the fashion they did last year. I like Bellinger for the Royals because One, good athlete. Can play either of the outfield positions and play them well. I think if the Royals acquired him, I would put him in center field. I would put him in center field ahead of Kyle Isbell. I would do that without much hesitation and use Isbell as a late-game defensive replacement. The other thing, too, is he's left-handed. And this is a lineup that I think is too right-handed presently and could use a little bit of left-handed balance. Again, in a perfect world, that would have been MJ Melendez, but it is not, in fact, a perfect world, at least not when it comes to Melendez's actual production. I still believe I'm still an MJ Melendez believer, but certainly Bellinger would represent an upgrade, and then you would have him to go with Vinny Pasquantino as some actual left-handed damage in the lineup. Not left-handed for left-handed sake, like Kyle Isbell's left-handed. That doesn't do anything for me. Maybe he's secretly right-handed and he didn't know it all this time. That's why he struggled to hit so far in his major league career. That's not fair. Isbell was a gust of wind away from being a hero in Game 4 of the American League Division Series, but it's a below-average bat. We've been over that many times. Bellinger is an above-average bat. The question is, can the Royals stomach $26 million a year, the next two for Cody Bellinger? That's a lot. That's a lot. And I think that the Royals would probably want to have the Cubs pay some of that down, at least the first year, maybe pay some of that money down, and it could cost them a better prospect in return. But I would be willing to kick the tires on Bellinger. I think that the left-handed pop, the ability to play all three outfield positions and play them well, because I think outfield defense is still super important to the Royals, and run prevention in particular is really important to this iteration, really all iterations. The Royals have never been good and not been good on defense. Certainly not in recent memory. So run prevention is still important, and Bellinger can help you with the glove. So that's one call I would make if I were JJ Piccolo. I would call the north side of Chicago and see if I could get, because even if the Royals just got 2024 Bellinger, you'd be overpaying, but it would be an upgrade. It would be a significant offensive upgrade if they got a guy who was, according to OPS Plus, 11% better than league average, with the possibility to pop 20, 25 home runs. So that's one idea. The other idea is a player even more near and dear to my heart. Player who wants out of his current situation so badly that he is willing to stop playing a position in which he has been the gold standard since he entered Major League Baseball. I'm talking about St. Louis Cardinals third baseman Nolan Arenado. It's been a rough last 2 years for Nolan Arenado, and maybe age is starting to catch up to the future Hall of Fame third baseman. No, I'm not biased when I say that. Not at all. Come on, the guy won 3 home run titles and 10 Gold Gloves. He's going to the Hall of Fame. Nolan Arenado spent the last 4 years in St. Louis, was third in MVP voting in 2022 when he hit 293, OPS 891, hit 30 home runs, drove in 103. Last 2 years, diminishing returns. 26 home runs, a 266 average, a 774 OPS in 2023, and then last year, the worst real year of his career, not counting the COVID year or his rookie season, in which he hit just 16 home runs. That's a career low. Again, not counting his rookie year or the COVID year. A 272 batting average, but just a 394 slug, which was the lowest of his career. There are two schools of thoughts on this with Arenado. One, again, Father Time is undefeated, and maybe Father Time is starting to catch up with Nolan Arenado as he enters his mid-30s. Here's my other thought on Nolan Arenado. Arenado is a tenacious competitor, driven to win. And when he's not in a situation that's going to allow him to win, when he's kind of in a no-win situation for his team, his individual performance tends to suffer. Let's go back to that 2020 season with the Rockies. It ended up being his last one in Colorado. 2018, of course, Nolan was awesome. He was third in MVP voting. And even in 2019, when the Rockies went from back-to-back playoff seasons to the pits, where they've remained since, Nolan hit 41 dingers in 2019, hit 315, which was a career-high batting average for him, and remained so. A 583 slug that year. He was tremendous in 2019. But also, by the end of 2019, he was pretty fed up with the organization, with the front office, and he wanted out. He wanted out of Colorado after 2019. Well, He didn't get traded the offseason of 2020, and then, of course, 2020 being the COVID year. So between it being the COVID year and between him being on a team he didn't want to be on and between another losing season, Arenado in 2020 was miserable. Hit 253, a 738 OPS. He stunk it up in the 48 games that he played in the COVID year. And then he went to St. Louis after being traded, and in 2021, he was right back to all-star form like he never left. And in 2022, like I mentioned, third in the MVP voting. I think Arenado is a hard enough worker and a driven enough competitor that he's still got some good baseball left in him. Good baseball is one thing. Here's what's left on Arenado's contract. $32 million in 2025, 5 of it being paid, by the way, by the Colorado Rockies, the stupidest franchise to ever exist. Please contract them and put me out of my misery. $27 million in 2026. $5 million of that already taken care of by your friends with the Colorado Rockies. I hate them so much. I hate them so much. And then $15 million in 2027. So the back of the napkin math on that, $74 million over 3 years, 10 of it spoken for by the worst owner in the history of sports, Dick Monfort. So it's 3 years and it's $64 million. So about $21 million a year. Was 2024 Nolan Arenado a $21 million a year player? No, he was not. Maybe he's a $15 million a year player at this stage. Could you get the Cardinals to pay down some money and make the dollars more comfortable if you're John Sherman, if you're JJ Piccolo? I think it's worth trying because 2 things. Number 1, run prevention. Arenado may have not won the Gold Glove the last 2 years, but he's still an outstanding defender over at third. He's going to remain an outstanding defender, I would say, into perpetuity. The other thing is I think being back in a competitive situation will bring good baseball out of Nolan Arenado. Can I guarantee he'd be even a $15 million a year player 3 years from now? No. But the Royals are good now, and he's an upgrade now. You realize how bad Maikel Garcia was at third base last year? Even a league average bat with the capability to hit 20, 25 home runs and a plus glove, that would look so good at third base. So good at third base. And I think a guy like Arenado would be great for Bobby Witt Jr. to have as a teammate, because when I say that Nolan Arenado is competitive, what I'm really saying is he's a red ass. And the Royals were lacking red ass for the better part of last season. They tried to remedy their red ass deficiency when they traded for Tommy Pham, or didn't trade him, acquired him off of waivers for the final month of the season. And I think that was good for the team to have in the clubhouse. They could use a little more of that. They could use a little bit of that burr in the saddle. Losing is unacceptable. A player like that, a player like Nolan Arenado, I think he's a perfect fit in Kansas City. Even if it doesn't end well at the end of his contract, they're good right now. Strike while the iron is hot. Go get a guy who, at worst, is going to be a league average hitter, an above average glove at third, more power in the middle of the lineup, and somebody who I think the young guys will benefit from having in the locker room. Somebody who maybe hasn't done a lot of winning or been on a lot of winning teams, but somebody whose competitive drive is what his is, really would benefit that roster, I think. So I love Nolan Arenado. You guys know that. He's one of my favorite players of all time. It would be a wonderful day for me if he could get off of a team that I loathe and get onto a team I kind of like. So that would be nice to root for Nolan Arenado again. So that's another reason that I'm rooting for that scenario. But those are the 2 names I think the Royals should kick the tires on. I know they're both expensive. I know the contracts might not be great business or great value. John Sherman's got the money. And if they need to throw in Hunter Renfroe as a financial make weight and then attach a better prospect to make it happen, do it. Go win right now. Go make the Royals better right now so that this thing keeps moving forward instead of 2024 looking like a happy accident. We'll take a break, come back, do Ask Me Anything next. Get your questions in on the YouTube live chat. I'll answer anything you ask. That's coming up next, 5A Sports Talk. Before I get to this Ask Dan Anything segment here as we wind down 580 Sports Talk, I'd love it if you asked me about my Great Life membership, because I'm always happy to talk about it. Yeah, it's getting cold. It's a little harder to take advantage of the golf when there's snow on the ground or when the ground is wet, but it's a perfect time to get out and check out the top tracer technology at Great Life North on Highway 24. I'm telling you, this stuff is so cool. Why drive all the way to Overland Park to do Top Golf? It's right here in our own backyards, folks. The Top Tracer technology not only has all of the cool stuff that you can do at a Top Golf facility, actually has more technology than you can do. How about a golf simulator within the Top Tracer technology? Go play a classic course, rip the ball down the driving range just like you're playing Pebble Beach. It's just such awesome technology. And yes, the bays are heated. And yes, you can get food and drink. And yes, it's a great time. And I highly, highly recommend it. Take advantage of the benefits of being a member at Great Life. Visit greatlifetopeka.com for details. Memberships make great Christmas gifts. All right, let's get to Ask Me Anything. Got some questions coming in on the YouTube live chat. So if you are watching on YouTube, drop a question in. I would be happy to answer it. I will try and go in the order in which they were received. We'll start with Mark B., who asks, what was in the Thanksgiving spread in Colorado when I went out to visit family for the holiday? And how did my 6-month-old son, not quite 6 months old, 6 months and 3 days, how did he handle the car ride? I'll handle the latter question first. He actually handled it really well, especially on the way back. There was a puking incident that was unfortunate just outside of Wakini. But once we got him cleaned up and he had all that out of him and he fell asleep, we got from Wakini to Topeka without a stop, which is borderline miraculous when you got a 6-month-old in tow. So that he handled it pretty well for his first road trip. Went pretty well, all things considered. As for the Thanksgiving spread, pretty traditional stuff. My mom hosted for a second straight year. We had turkey, we had sweet potatoes, we had stuffing, we had cranberry sauce. The one touch, I suppose, when I was a kid, I really loved the canned cranberry sauce. I know some people like to make their own. We had some homemade cranberry sauce at the table from people who visited. But I always, when I was a kid, loved like the sliced canned cranberry sauce. And my mom has always remembered that. In the last 2 years that she has hosted Thanksgiving, has made sure there's been a can of cranberry sauce for me. And I appreciate that touch very, very much. Next one, Mark H. and Vance ask a similar question. If I could take an all-inclusive free trip to watch any sporting event outside of the United States, anywhere in the world, what event would I go to? It would be a Liverpool soccer match. I would love to see a big game, a big match in Europe, and just be a part of that game day atmosphere. Liverpool's my preferred English Premier League side. So I would say, a game at Anfield, maybe a Merseyside derby when they play Everton, maybe a match against Manchester United, something like that. That would be the one. If I could do that, if I could do it for free, that would be the one that I would do. Jeffrey asks, what am I getting Asher for Christmas? And what am I getting my wife for Christmas? But don't want you to spoil the surprise just in case she's listening. I haven't decided what I'm getting Abby yet. That is the truth. That is not me covering. I just haven't decided. Asher, we're getting him lots of toys and lots of clothes because he is growing out of clothes so fast. This kid is in like the 12-month sleepers, 12 months. He's, again, as I mentioned, not quite 6 months old. And he's just bursting out of his clothes. So we're going to get him some clothes. We're going to get him some toys. We're not going to go crazy with it because he's only 6 months old. He's not going to really remember the unwrapping of his first Christmas presents, but we'll do that for Asher for his first Christmas. Vance wants to know spearmint, peppermint, cinnamon, or wintergreen mints. I got to be honest, Vance, I've never been a big mint guy. Not my preferred candy or breath freshener of choice. Never really been a big mint guy, but do enjoy a peppermint here and there for seasonal sake. See if we got any more Ask Me Anything questions. Vance has another one. Light beers, Bud, Coors, Miller, or Busch? Come on, Vance. I'm a Coloradan. You know the answer to that question. You know the answer to that. I genuinely do think it's not just my home state bias coming into play, that the Coors Light is a substantially better light beer offering than Bud Light, Miller Light, or Busch Light. I don't judge. I'm not the beer snob I used to be. I used to be one of those, well, I drink hoppy IPAs and crafted pilsners. Now, I still love craft beer, don't get me wrong. But you get further along in life and you grow to appreciate the pleasures of a Coors Light just as much as you enjoy an imperial stout. I like both. I'm not one of those people that gets real snobby one way or another. I used to be. I'm not that way anymore. That's get older and wiser. One more. Mark H asks, favorite chips. Am I a Cheeto or Dorito aficionado? My favorite Doritos are the Salsa Verde Doritos. They're in the green bag. My wife had never heard of them when I had a bag of them. Back when I was living in Colby, I had a bag of them in my apartment. I was so excited. They're not always in the stores, but every time they are, I try and buy them up. And those are my favorite Doritos, the Salsa Verde Doritos. I think those are the best Doritos. And my wife had never heard of those. I tried to convince her they were the best Dorito, and I don't know that I got much traction. Okay, I lied. One more. Mark B thought I wouldn't answer this one, so I'm going to do it. Boxers or briefs? I'll be brief. Boxer briefs. Again, why not both? Why not the comfort of both? We'll take a break, come back, wrap up this episode of 5 Day Sports Talk after this. Time to wrap up and walk off this edition of 580 Sports Talk with the final word. Final word for me today. I don't know if Kansas football can abide another 5-7 or worse season next year. This is not where this program was supposed to be coming out of 2024. They were supposed to keep the forward momentum going, maybe even compete for a Big 12 championship, fill up Arrowhead Stadium, make it look good for the recruits and the fans watching on TV, and bring all of that momentum back with them to campus for the renovated David Booth Kansas Memorial Stadium. Instead, they went 5-7, and there are 38 seniors on that roster, and most, if not all of them, are not going to use their extra year of eligibility if they even have one. I don't think Jalen Daniels is going to use that extra year. So this is now a program that's in a little bit of a state of flux, and I don't think they can afford to go into next year feeling like, oh, this is a rebuilding year. This will be fine. Our fans will stand by us if we go 4-8, but if we do it with young guys. I don't think that's what's going to happen. Not at a basketball school like KU. KU football has to be good to capture the attention. They have to get back to a bowl at a minimum next year. And I think that for Lance Leipold and Kansas to be able to set that as a reasonable goal, they're going to have to portal really, really hard and go get some veteran guys, maybe even go get a veteran quarterback who they know can win at a Power 4 level. It's not a great class of portal quarterbacks right now, honestly. It's certainly nothing like last year's class. There's not a Cam Ward. There's not even a Will Howard. But KU would be wise to explore all their options to make sure that they stay veteran, to make sure they stay experienced, to make sure they get back to a bowl in 2025. So I don't think they can afford not to. We'll be back tomorrow from 3 until 6. For Brendan and Spencer, I'm Dan. This was 580 Sports Talk. K-State women's basketball next.